is correct now. So let's check it out. What do we have here? Let's refresh. Yep, no, it's still waiting. But it, what the? Okay, I'm somewhere in a wrong place. Yep. We're live. We're live. We're live. I was watching my own commercial.
Nice.
Yep. Who doesn't want a little bit extra money, right?
That's
Uh,
right.
what's up, everybody? This is John from Coding Addict, and welcome to another live stream. And as always, I'm joined by one and only Mr. Paul Bratlovsky, the mastermind behind Coding After 30 channel. How are you, Paul?
Pretty good. Pretty good. I almost saw you say 40. I almost saw you say
You know what? For some
that.
weird reason, this is like the easiest opening line ever, and yet the moment I get to the coding after 30 channel, is just I mess up pretty much. If you go back and look at the other live streams, you'll see that I always mess up. I don't know why.
It,
Uh,
I think it's deep down. People know I'm 41, and they're like, "Man,
yeah,
you gotta
I
figure
want to
out the
say,
name.
I just want
You
to
gotta
say
figure out the name. You
40.
gotta figure out the name."
Yeah,
Yeah.
no. How was your Halloween?
It was a surprise. I forgot that Halloween was coming. Luckily, I was able to pick up some candy, so it went pretty well. But yeah, that's what happens when you don't have kids anymore because they're too old and doing their thing. So
Yep, and
you
plus
know.
when you're a developer,
Oh,
time
yep, yeah,
flies.
in my
You
dungeon,
don't
in my
notice.
dungeon. Yep.
So I assume you didn't dress up or nothing like
No, I didn't dress up. I just sat outside giving out candy while
that.
reading a book. That was pretty much it.
That's
Yeah.
already sounds like a plan. So yeah, if you want to check out some cool content, be sure to check out Paul's channel, Coding After 30. And while you're there, be sure to smash that like button. I'm told that it really helps the algorithm. So,
It
uh,
does. It does.
as far as the announcements, thank you for everyone who is showing up, who's participating. Thank you for everyone who's listening after that. I mean, if we can, like, if you can get something out of this, this is just, unbelievable. So, thank you, everyone. And we have been getting some questions about the podcast, so I want to kind of address them. Where at the moment there's few issues where our audio is definitely not up to the standards because we are using a live stream recording, and that usually brings down. If you have been listening to our channel videos, you'll notice that the audio is way worse because again it's a live stream and everything. So in order for us to make some kind of podcast, like a real podcast, we would need to work on the audio, and at the moment we really don't have kind of time for that. And also it comes down to length. So I don't really see how. I mean, I appreciate everyone who's listening for those 2 hours and everything, but I mean, I really don't see how, as far as podcasts, that's just going to be normal for, I don't know, 2 3 hours or whatever. So we would need to cut it down, and we would need to make those decisions. And lastly, it was like, if we're being honest with ourselves, the content, the quality is not yet up there. We're still just using this as a sandbox, as a playground where we're just essentially we're recording the same conversations we have throughout the week. So we have conversations throughout the week, and what we do, we just sit down on Monday and we just record it, and that's about it. And then in order for it to get up to level where to the podcast what we're listening, I mean, they're not going to be as good, but even if we want to get closer, we just need to spend more time here and see where actually this one goes. Now, one
Yep.
thing we have decided is to pretty much set up the main theme that we have for the live stream. So each video, each week, pretty much it's a different one. We will make that as a separate video on Paul's channel. So that's going to be a video if people want to go and just watch that part where they're maybe not interested in the questions and all that. So yeah, we will do that starting with this week. Is just going to be, I don't know at what time exactly this week, but it's definitely starting with this week. We'll start doing that. And do you have anything to add, Paul, as far as
No, just the
those
idea
points?
to have the opportunity for those of you guys who want just the main point that we talked about on the podcast. You just want to listen to it, or if you watch the podcast and you want to go back to get just the main point, the video is going to be a great place to do it. And it'll be live on YouTube. And those of you who like to talk to us, the live. You'll be able to go over the same points, but then you'll be able to ask us follow-up questions on the live stream. So I think that's cool.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, we actually came up with a new segment. this week. So there's two. So there's main theme, which is coming up, but then we also decided to add one more, which essentially is like weekly fails and weekly kind of suggestions, tips, or whatever. So essentially, as far as fails, we just want to showcase, what we failed on, so you can avoid that. And then tips, maybe something that again you can help in your developer's journey. And essentially, as far as fails, this week I have, with JS 2022 came out the add method where you can nicely select from the string, from the array, like specific item using the index, and it was really cool. And I was working on a React app, and I was like, I needed to make like a little icon where I grabbed the first letter from the company and just place it there. And I was like, oh, this is going to be a very good use case. So I'm working on it. I can see that it's working in React. Everything is fine. I push it up to production. Next thing I know, that as I'm checking on my phone, it's just the moment I visit the app, it crashes. And the thing is, with phone, it's not like I can go into developer tools and decide what's happening. So I was like, okay, so my phone is using Safari. All right, so let me go back and just take a look at Safari. And of course, next thing I know, it clearly with red letters says there's no add method, blah, 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 blah. So what I do is I just switched around to a different method that has been around for a long time, and it worked. So you can use it, but just be aware of the Safari. As far as the tips, so if you have been using Terminal, the console, basically what you get on a Mac, on Windows as well, uh, all the time what I've been doing is always when I want to clear it, I just type clear, clear, clear. And actually today, someone said, hey, why you're not using Control and L, which pretty much clears it out. And I'm always a big fan of these like small shortcuts that in the long run actually save you a lot of time and energy. So any suggestions for this week, Paul?
I mean, like, for me, I've been struggling with reset password with email, and one thing that, like, because I'm working with a already made CMS, and my assumption was that certain things should work right out of the box. So for me, the gotcha was don't anticipate things to work right out of the box, and make sure you still do due diligence and read the documentation on how things work. And so in my case, I had to configure which provider to use before any of those reset method like password and forgot password methods will even trigger or work. And so for me, it was just like pay attention more and read the documentation when you're not sure how something works. I know it's very genetic, but that's where I was stuck this week,
And
literally.
but did you ended up adding some kind of provider to the
Yeah,
strategy
so
or?
basically, yeah, so I realized that with email is that you can't just do something willy-nilly, especially if it's going to be a customer-facing website, because people hate spam. And so if it doesn't follow proper protocol, like your email will go into a spam folder and people won't even get it. So there's a bunch of third-party email providers that if you're using something that's working with clients, you're going to have to suck it up and go ahead with like a third party solution, because it's going to be easier and you're not going to have problems with that.
And are they easy to integrate as far as Strappy or?
Yes, Strappy actually has. That's a great question. Strappy actually already has bunch of most popular providers. They have Strappy packages that you can install via npm, and so then you just do your configuration file, and that makes it like super easy. But it's only easy if you know what to do, which I didn't know before today. So it's easy once you read the documentation and you understand. And they're not really clear. They don't say that it doesn't work unless you provide a provider. Uh, so they need to be more clear in their documentation, because I was like, it says that it assumes that it should work. No, no, you need a provider. So that's
And
it.
this actually is a very good segue to our main theme, which is show up every day. Now, if you were watching our early tips, yes, this is a repetition because we have decided to re-record them, and therefore we will also include in this live stream. And I know it sounds easy, right? Like, thank you, Captain Obvious. Of course, I'm going to show up. I mean, what kind of advice or tip is that? But the thing is, in the beginning, everything is nice and cute. You learn some HTML tags, you learn some CSS selectors, you can apply the styling. I mean, maybe even JavaScript, a little bit of functionality, and you're rolling, right? So, Facebook, here I come. But as you're progressing like further in your journey, sooner or later, you will start facing challenges. There's going to be some concepts that are very hard to understand. There's going to be issue with resources where you want to tackle that specific topic, but you cannot find the resources for some reason. Now, maybe the resources are there, but they're not working. And I'm not even going to talk about like when you start looking for a job. I mean, that's a major one where you apply for hundreds of jobs, you get no replies, you're being rejected. Now, I personally haven't really met anybody who enjoys that. Like, if you do, then I mean, I don't want to go out of my limb and say there's something wrong with you, but yeah, maybe you should check out your, like, whatever your condition, because I mean, everyone hates it. I mean, it is, it's not a pleasant feeling to be rejected, and at that point, it is just pretty easy to quit, right? You always can go with, I just don't feel like it, not smart enough, I'm too old, I have too many commitments, and that sort of thing. And I know that this sounds very generic, right? It sounds like something off the bus stop. But if you do show up and you do the work, eventually you will figure everything out. That's just the way it works. You will figure out those concepts. For example, the big one usually in the beginning is the closures, right? You will figure out where to get best resources. What might be the best resource for me, maybe not best one for you, but you will find them. You'll find what works for you. And yes, you will land that first job and maybe your even dream job in a FANG. We will happen, right? And the biggest thing that I've noticed when talking with people in industry is basically you treat the setback and challenges as a learning experience and you just continue to get better, right? Continue to show up and success eventually will just follow. And also, let me mention just what we talked about. Like those struggles, they don't go away. It's not like there's this shiny day where you wake up and you're like, okay, now I can just, as I eat, I can just type the code, right? So with right hand, I'm eating, and with left one, I'm just typing. That it's not how it works. Essentially, what's happening, you're just getting better and handling those setbacks. Because if you think about it, the job as a developer effectively is to solve the problems using the code. That's it. That's our actual job description. And even though I really enjoy my work, like I enjoy building features, seeing the results, and I go like, oh yeah, well that's pretty cool how it came out. But pretty much every time I want to implement or learn something new, just like Paul mentioned, like he needed to do something specific. It's not like it's on your plate and you just, yeah, I'm going to do that. No, you still face the same issues. Sometimes you're overwhelmed by the size of the project. Sometimes something is not working as you expected. You cannot find the answer, and etc. And let me just mention two things. Like you can apply the same thing in pretty much everything, whether that's personal growth, professional growth, martial arts, getting in shape. It really comes down to just showing up, doing the work and rest. You will figure out as you move on. And lastly, let me just mention, so if there is times when I don't feel like it, what helps me to get going is simply to work on some small features. I don't know. Sometimes it's I build some card or maybe a sidebar, maybe in React or vanilla. It doesn't really matter. So I spend a little bit of time and then I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm ready to jump back in and I'm ready to go. What about you, Paul? What do you think about showing up every day?
That is the most important part, is understanding that it's definitely not a sprint. It's putting in the work over time that's going to get you the result. And one important thing that you mentioned is having feedback that you could make course correction and understand what you're missing. And so, like, it took me forever to get hired. That's because I kept jumping from one tutorial to another. I kept spinning my wheels. I kept thinking maybe there's like a language that's more hireable than another language. So I jumped from Ruby to PHP to, C++, every possible language, and I got nowhere. And so I just was spinning my wheels until I just committed. You know what? I'm going to learn JavaScript and React. I'm going to do it well so I could get enough depth in the language and being able to actually build stuff that I'm good enough to actually do the things that they require you to do the work. And that's how you're going to get hired. The one thing that I want to add to showing up every day is that when, like, and I'm assuming you mean this, is that when someone makes that decision to show up every day, they're committing to do no, like, whatever it takes to get done what needs to be done. So they're not waiting for somebody else. They're not waiting for somebody else's next course to come out. They're not waiting for, you know, coding after 30. What's the best advice on which language to use? They're not waiting for that. They're doing their own research. They're doing their own work, because no one's going to wait for you. And the people that and this is going to sound bad, but the people that keep asking, like, well, how do I get a job? How do I do that? Like, once you ask that question, you hear that, like, our channel, somebody else's channel, they're going to give you same advice: do the work to get where you're going. And so you got to get it out of the head. There's no magic pill or magic formula. You show up every day, you do the work, and the most important part, like you said, John, have that feedback cycle. Like, if you're not getting hired and you don't know why, maybe it's your resume. So make sure that you're asking people, like, why they didn't choose you. They could tell you, well, your project sucks or your resume sucks. At least now you know what you have to fix and to adjust. And that's exactly what happened to me. I wasn't getting anybody calling me back. And then one day my friend goes, well, I looked at your resume and it looks like crap. And that's probably why people are not calling you back. And so what did I do? I Googled how to write the best resume. I bought a template, and then I redone my resume. And now I'm getting more views and more people, like, coming into me on LinkedIn. So that's the feedback that you have to kind of take and, actually do something about. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. And again, get the feedback, but don't just treat it as like that's not a. It's pretty much it's not a evaluation of you. It's just of the work that you might still need to do. It doesn't mean that you're bad and it's never gonna happen or whatever. No, it's just continue doing the work, and you'll see how your own project change from a month ago and what you can do now. I mean,
Hey,
it's night and day for
yeah,
everyone who's going. It's again,
yeah.
it's everyone's road where you're looking 2 years and you're like, oh my, this was me. I built that. I mean,
Yeah.
and at the time I was like, oh yeah, wow, this is
So
very cool.
I just realized that you're, like, actually a great example of what people should be doing. Because let me ask you a question: do you have a Python course?
No,
Do you have a PHP course?
no,
Do you have a Ruby course?
no.
No, you don't have any of those courses, but you're one of the most successful Udemy instructors out there. I know you're humble about it, blah, 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 but, like, you helped so many people, but it's because you decided what you wanted to do. You decided what technologies you wanted to teach. There's a method behind your thinking. You had a plan and you executed on that plan. If people look at your YouTube channel, like, you put in the work, like, you have, like, over 500 some, like, I don't know, like, you have a massive amount of videos on your channel, and you stuck with your plan. You didn't jump from tech to tech to tech. You're like, hey, I'm just going to develop the best understanding I have in these topics so I could present the best knowledge to my students in these topics. And that's why you're the best. It's kind of outlines exactly the strategy you need to get a job as a development. And I kind of just realized, hey, that's exactly what you lived and did. Like, that's why you don't, like, have everything. You just have exactly what you needed to do.
For me, it would take such a long time to, because I don't want to put out something that is not, that I, let's say 2 months is not enough for me to understand how something works or whatever. I
Yeah.
need to try. I need to build those things. So it was definitely like focusing on that thing and just kind of and sticking with it. Yeah, it's of course I would want nothing more than create more and more courses. But at the end of the day, it comes down to making some kind of content that is like at least is compatible with what's out there, at least at the very minimum.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
we actually tackled it pretty
Yeah.
quickly.
No, it's good.
I was thinking this is going to be 45 minutes. We're actually only like 19 minutes in.
No,
So,
but it's good because now we could look at all the questions and come up with other
yep,
topics to
yep.
talk
And
about.
we can slowly start banging them out. Okay. Will John be broadcasting from his brick wall dungeon for Halloween? Yeah, I don't think brick wall was coming back. That was like a spontaneous decision. If you see this that video,
Yeah.
it's like a hostage over there. Yeah, no, no, no. This
Blink
this,
twice, John.
this yeah. And as far as blinking, I this is the funny thing when you talk, because I'm very kind of, I don't know how to explain. Uh, I guess the more you sit by the computer, whatever, I literally need to kind of not educate myself, but like I was really interested in how do you when you talk face to face with person, right? What are the steps of like just so they trust you more or whatever? Like I mean some basic things. I mean I don't want to scam anybody, but I just want to come off as as normal person. So And one of the things they say always, like, look in the eyes. That's kind of a thing. And then as far as blinking, I don't know. That I guess I just don't blink. I don't know. I'm like probably just looking at people like this.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I mean, yeah, no, brick wall. Long story short, it's sitting here, but it's not
yeah,
coming back. I think this is kind of.
yeah,
We're still testing out some stuff, but this looks like this is gonna be it.
yeah.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
I was gonna say it's funny, like they talk about making eye contact. I'm very like audible type of a person. So when
Mm,
I start talking about certain topics that I have to think about, I have to hear myself and I have to hear the other person. So I literally will face away from the person and will face my ear to them, and they
mm.
think I'm being rude, but I'm just like want to make sure that I'm giving you my fullest attention and I'm really listening and going over what you're telling me in your mind. So it's kind of funny, like everybody's different
But
in
I've
terms of
noticed
like
that this is also not like like because once you read that stuff and you kind of start following like how do other people,
yeah,
it's normal for a person like let's say when you're talking you like lift up and you start like looking there and like thinking
yeah.
that it's not like uncommon. It's not like everybody just does like this all the time, but it does help to look the person in the eye instead of all the time looking down or whatever. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
it's and once you start practicing that, it actually, at least in my opinion, you kind of a little bit present yourself better. I don't know. That might be me. Maybe it's the opposite. I'm not sure. So we have Andrew, and actually Andrew posted today on Twitter. He something along the lines like he's like today is not one of those days when I feel not feel like it, but something along the lines of like getting starting to code and whatever. So hopefully Andrew, everything worked out well. You convinced yourself. You're definitely here. So thank you for staying late. And hopefully everything is cool in Arkansas. And Halloween was great. And ba, ba, ba. Oh yeah, and he's saying that he wishes that today would. Actually, you know what? I can do this. So we could actually do the. We could have done yesterday the thingy, but the live stream because that would be actual Halloween. What would you dress as Paul?
I don't know, a break point.
Breakpoint.
I don't know. I don't know.
It was funny.
Some sort
Like
of error,
so, every
something.
year we get a costume for my daughter, and it was easier when she was like 1 and 2
Yeah,
because then like she like you just put
like
it in and she starts
yeah,
crying. It's
that's
fine. You
it.
take the
Yeah,
photos and you like run for the hills. And now she's a toddler and she's like, nope, nope. It's like, are you sure you don't want to wear the bunny costume? Nope. And
is she
that's
in her
it.
princess phase already?
No. Actually, she has
Yeah,
never really. She likes all kinds of things, but not that as far as princess stuff is never
yeah,
been really. Kind of. She never like really. I mean, there's favorite characters in cartoons and blah blah blah, but Princess Phase not
yeah,
doesn't seem to be getting to her.
yeah.
So we'll see. Probably later. Okay, these comments like so this software is awesome, but the moment I basically click, either I'm just gonna be watching down like this, or I don't know how to do it, or maybe side by side. I don't really have no idea. So I'm gonna do something like this. So we got the. Are you gonna dress as Ninja, Paul, or no?
Ninja.
No, that's what
No,
Andrew is saying.
no, no. Like for me, I don't need a disguise because I'm Russian. I just say I'm KGB and people run away. So that's my costume right there. KGB agent.
Yeah,
You
no,
know,
no, no.
I have activation word.
So we've got Nico. I wake up early for John. Thank you, Nico. Thanks to everyone who's staying late and waking up early. We have Jake. Let's do this way. Can't wait to see another great stream with John and Paul. You guys are awesome. Thank you, Jake.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Just wake up. I go breakfast. Come at the end. Okay. Breakfast is always good. I'll see you at 6. Blah, blah, blah. We have Tammy. Hello, Tammy. Hopefully everything is cool in Arizona. Yep, we have another awesome night to come. Show up every day. Yep, Jake, that's the best one. Uh, so that one day I show up every day, so one day I can buy a fancy car like Paul.
Yeah, yeah.
He
Did you
probably
see my
mean
video?
the one where you said like, oh, buy my Udemy course and
My
then you'll get
Python course. Yeah,
yeah.
because Python is the thing. Data science. You know, you easy gonna get it done.
I think
you know.
because it was like 40 seconds. I'm like, I have to watch this one.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
could.
now the joke is with Tech Rally, he's like, that's actually Paul's car, and he pretended that it's not his. So I'm
Oh,
like, well, people will never know. But to me, I would not buy a car like that. I have better taste, to be honest. Like, I'm not gonna lie.
so
Like,
what? You just went up to a random car in Texas and just
no, no,
said,
I have a friend who
"Oh,
very
okay,
successful, so he has like a very fancy
mm,
supercar, you know.
okay."
So yeah, because it matters, I guess, to drive a fancy car.
In some areas, yeah, more than
Like
others.
LA, LA
Oh,
matters.
don't get me started. This,
You know,
this, this,
some areas in Texas, yeah, it's like,
this.
yeah,
I mean, I could make another podcast about
just
the like living in Illinois and Chicago. What you think is a I wouldn't even say like an upper, like just normal, like okay,
yeah,
upper class. What you think is an upper class in LA is is not even a class.
yeah, it's not even there.
No, no, no. It was so interesting to kind of see this kind of lifestyle and everything, and not again. No, I mean it's a huge city, so we're not
Yeah.
like not it, but overall, like the difference between the Midwest and California is very noticeable.
Yeah, I think it's like having priorities. I mean, if you're so rich you can have everything, that's great. But for me, like I would always take travel and being able to live in different places over like a fancy car. So
No,
I got it.
100%,
Yeah,
hundred
I
percent
drive a
agree.
fantastic Toyota Camry from 2011. It's fantastic. It's fast enough to get to like 35 miles an hour and stay there for the rest of the trip, you know.
No,
It's,
I 100% agree. I would pick like living the kind of lifestyle of doing the things that I like over some car or the house with
yeah,
20,000 rooms that you don't live in. I'm
yeah,
talking
yeah.
about, you get to really experience and enjoy that life. That I would pick that any day over some kind of
the
like
the craziest story I have my cousin, like they were like came from Russia. She married like this guy that she was like middle school sweetheart, and they both came from like pretty like poor Russian like background, and they like he became a very successful plastic surgeon in New York, and she created her pediatrician practice. So now they have a lot of money, and because he does plastic surgery, he has to live in like a super big house, and he has to have a nice car because that's how he gets some of these high paying clients. But I went to visit them like 3 years after they moved in. There's like 6, 7 rooms in the house that still have the wrapping from when the furniture was still delivered because they don't even use because they're not used to that lifestyle. They're like, oh, what do I need like 10 rooms for? It's to me it's funny, you know.
yeah, no,
But they travel all the time too.
my
It's good.
previous one of my previous jobs was basically in as a window installer, and we used to go to again these massive fancy houses, and I noticed time and time again where there's so much, like, in my opinion, like waste. Like you don't use that, you don't. And I'm not saying maybe, what do I know what they do, like, as far as enjoying their life, but just to trade that just because, I definitely wouldn't. I don't think that there's no, like, for me the biggest thing when you start doing, like, literally when you can start doing the things that you want to do, right? Like
Yeah,
as far as your
exactly.
hobbies, as far as like spending time with your family, that to me is far more interesting than having some kind of fancy, I don't know,
Yeah,
toaster or whatever. So uh yeah, you could make nuggets from the conversations, maybe. Yeah, well, that's what we're kind of thinking as far as that intro video.
yeah,
That's kind of the plan, where we want to go. Where we'll make that one theme. That's gonna be that main theme, and then people can just, they don't have to watch for 2 hours. They
yeah,
can
yeah.
just
The
get
whole
the
live
main
stream,
theme.
but
Because
live
that.
the cool thing about live stream is that we get to hear from you guys and asking questions and telling us what you've been doing, and so that's kind of cool. But
Yeah, no, I mean, that's so. There's two sides of it. So one is if you just want to hear something that we have been actually preparing, because we take that topic, we usually like exchange the ideas, what we're gonna, what we're thinking about that. So we already know, for example, for next week, that's gonna be a very cool one. We just needed to do because of my incompetence, in the sense that I cannot focus on seven things at once. We actually had a different topic, but since we'll be recording the other one, that's why we did this one. But next one is actually very, very cool. I'm very excited. We have been talking about that one for, I believe, 2 weeks or whatever. So I'm very looking forward to that one. As far as I get questions here about the clearing the console, I'm not sure. I would need to basically post on Twitter. This is what I do. So when I have some kind of command that, for example, I have on Twitter, very popular one that people are asking how to remove Git repository, because usually everything, I mean, everything that I have is on Git. Everything is
Yep.
publicly available. So, and usually in the courses or YouTube videos, I always say, hey, go with Git clone, go with Git clone. And the problem is that when the person is done with the project, when he or she wants to push it up, it's like, well, you have no permissions.
Mentioned it right.
And then it's like, well, how do you remove it? So I know that on Mac it's rm-rf and then .git. So you remove
Yep.
that folder. And then I just posted it on a Twitter, and then people just jumped in and said, yeah, this is for Windows and all that. So I can post this one on Twitter, and then I can get the better answer. Or you can just go and look at the thread, or
Yeah.
maybe
Oh,
somebody's gonna answer here.
this reminds me, I did find a good tip that's actually more productive than the last tip I gave. So I've been doing a lot of so I do a lot of front end with React. So I've been doing a lot of debugging actually using VS Code. And I just realized that it's a way better debugging experience using just Chrome. And so I've been actually jumping in and doing debugging with Chrome
But can you
because
elaborate though? Like,
yeah,
what kind of project and how does the
so
workflow look like?
basically any front end projects, Chrome just works. So you don't even need to turn on VS Code debugger. You're able to, I believe, hit on because I use Mac. Once I open up my debugger, I'm actually gonna review the steps so I don't mess up here. But yeah, you open up the debugger and you click. I believe it's Commando or Optional, one of the like buttons, whatever. Because I just started
No,
doing this
I'm
recently.
just laughing at Commando.
Eh,
It always
yeah, Commando
we
command.
both had the same childhood pretty much. Like
Yeah,
Commando
yeah,
was always like a very
yeah. Right,
luxury where
right.
like it's like anyway. Yeah, sorry
Well,
for
so basically, I literally have my application running in VS Code, whatever. I open up the inspector and I click Command O, and it allows me to search the files that I wanna like work with in Chrome, which will basically like if I have a whatever get like video whatever JS file, I could search it and it'll bring it up in my Chrome. And in Chrome, I could set breakpoints. And then when I click refresh, it will stop at those breakpoints. And then I could do everything in Chrome. And it's way faster and better experience. I'll have to make a quick video about it. But I've been really kind of just trying to now embrace this whole concept of doing most of the um, debugging in Chrome. And my friend who's he used to be a senior software engineer. He's an architect now, but he's the one who told me when he was doing my PR review, he debugged it with Chrome. And I was like, wow, this is so fast. This is so cool. And he's like, yeah, you should do this too. So that's something brand new to me, literally within like last few days. So I
nope.
still gotta learn more and play with it. The only drawback, if you're doing node development, then it's not going to help you, because it's in Chrome. it's
Yeah, and it's in a browser, and
yeah, so you'd have to use VS Code and stuff like that. So
no, but that's
that,
definitely something very I would be very interested in seeing
yeah,
how
it's
like
really really good,
so how
like
you
really
present
really good.
that in video and all that,
Yeah,
because yeah, that sounds like something that could save a lot of time and energy and all that. So
yeah, and it's
because
really really quick. Like I was surprised, like the way it worked.
okay, we got. What do you think about combination of GraphQL integrated with MERN stack, and if there will be some courses discussing it? Let me just answer the courses, and then I'm gonna kind of defer to Paul because he's the expert in GraphQL, and then I'll give you kind of my 2 cents. As far as course, most likely not. Again, we have there's we discussed with Paul like behind the camera. There's some major things that are like coming as far as my personal life. So we'll see. Like I'm working diligently right now on pretty much on a MERN course, at least the first project, and then we'll see how it goes. So as far as GraphQL, just to give you like 2 cents before Paul jumps in, I mean, effectively, you just pick that over REST API. So if normally, I mean, again, there's no law for that, but normally when you're talking about MERN, you are talking about the where you have the API built with Express, normally REST API, and then you have the front end with React. Now, when you can do all kinds of variations there, I know that I remembered in last live stream there was a question. Well, what about TypeScript? And I remember what was the other thing. Yeah, you can add TypeScript. Again, there's no TypeScript you can add to any kind of React project. There's no law against or for it. It's just with GraphQL you get that structured data. And now I'm gonna hand it off to Paul because he works with it daily.
Yeah. So, like, what I would say, if you're just starting out to learn GraphQL, just learn how to implement it on the front end using Apollo client. And if you ever like, the reason why I'm going to say this is because that'll be like the best and easiest place to start to learn about it. And actually, Strappy, which is a CMS, allows you to set up a backend with GraphQL very, very easily. And it's like a black box that just works, but you yourself don't really have to know how it works unless you're going to do some complex stuff. So I not a Node.js or MERN expert, but I've done like the basics. And I also build a backend with GraphQL, like following like online documentation with GraphQL. It is way more difficult creating a GraphQL backend than it is creating just a regular REST API. So if you're just learning front end, I would definitely suggest don't try to build your own backend in GraphQL, because there's a lot more work. Like, because on the front end, the benefits of GraphQL is you have one endpoint. So whatever you ask, you're going to get back. Where in a REST API, if you have like, videos, then you have users, then you have likes, you're going to have to make three different calls to three different endpoints. But GraphQL is not magic. So how does GraphQL know that you have that one endpoint? How do you get those relationship? Well, you got to code that in the backend with resolvers and a bunch of other stuff that is really, really hard if you're brand new. So like, I would say, like, if you want to learn about GraphQL, just to keep this short, start with Strappy or find an API that uses GraphQL. But in terms of implementing it in a whole project, I would say if you know Node very well, then you could start learning GraphQL. But if you're not familiar, it's just going to add extra complexity that I don't think it's worth it if you're starting out. So, and to finish up, because I always forget this part, I do talk about my project that I built on my Tuesday night live stream. We're using GraphQL, and you could kind of learn and get some tips about it from there. But I wanted to tell the truth about GraphQL first. It's not like it's amazing, but the backend, it's like, even what like bunch of people that are good developers, they type like, oh, Apollo client is great, that they're like, Apollo server, not so much. Like, not because it's not great, it's because just you need like a lot more work to accomplish the same thing you accomplish in Node, like with REST API, which is like funny. And I didn't believe it until I tried it. And then it's like every relationship you have to code with a resolver, and because it's basically like the way the graph data structure is. It's like you have to point from one to like all the connections you have to make yourself. Like it's pretty intense.
Just tell us the truth.
Yeah, don't do backend with GraphQL unless you know Node very well. I'm just gonna say there.
No,
You
there
know.
was a few years, not few years, I don't know, 5 years ago, there was this Will Smith movie where he was playing a African doctor or something about NFL. So, and there
Mm.
was comedians were making jokes about that. Tell us
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
truth. Anyway,
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah. That was a very intense, movie for Will Smith.
yeah,
He had to
it
put
was,
everything in terms of his acting chops to
yep,
make that
yep,
happen.
yep.
Yeah.
And as far as my kind of 2 cents, I always say to people, if you are ready for GraphQL, if you're not doing that just when you literally like learn use state, if you're already comfortable with React, my suggestion is if you want to kill two birds at the same time, then go for Gatsby. This is going to be a perfect way for you to
Oh yeah.
learn how to actually consume GraphQL data, to understand what you're going to be doing on a front end, and you'll also learn Gatsby. And but what Paul just suggested, also awesome example where you take the Strappy, you configure the plugin that puts everything, all the data is going to be on GraphQL, and then you can learn the Apollo client. So
So funny story, because I forgot about Gatsby uses GraphQL, because I didn't know React well enough yet, so I started doing Gatsby. And then when they introduced GraphQL, I was like, "Oh my god, this is crazy!" And I kind of like, "All right, I'm gonna come back to this later." But that's a great, yeah, definitely Gatsby will definitely prepare you as well.
In the beginning, it was a very big shock, but then you quickly learn the benefits as far as okay, so sorry, we got one super chat, and of course I lost it already. So let me see. So we've got hi John, tech skills required to work as React dev. Uh, I mean, okay, let's separate it in two things. As far as getting into React, like we keep mentioning over and over and over again, React is pretty much, in my opinion, kind of like I would say consists of three things. First, it's built on JavaScript. So the better you are in JavaScript, the better you'll be in React. There's no question about it. The more you'll know, the smoother transition is going to be. There's again, you'll be using so many methods and vanilla JS in general in React that yes, the more vanilla JS you know, the better. Second, React doesn't build like web apps for you. You will need to use HTML and CSS. There's again, if you want to build something meaningful, you will need to know the HTML and CSS. And then the third part is the actual React. So that's when we're talking about how you can update the state and what is the global state and how you can fetch the data and all those kind of things that they basically do for you, so you don't have to spend enormous time on let's say building it with vanilla.js. Because again, if you compare two things, if you compare as this most basic example, building a e-commerce with vanilla.js and building with React. Again, I know that there's people who will disagree with me on those points, but it is easier with React at the end of the day, right? So when you learn it, it's just going to be way faster for you to build it. Now, with that said, if you can do that in vanilla.js, I can guarantee you'll have no issue picking up React. Like
Yeah,
none, zero.
yeah,
You'll be just flying. You'll be like, okay, so this actually saves me such and such and such. Now, as far as being good at React, again, we'll probably return to the same point where you learn how to do the basics. But what I'm noticing over and over and over again, we have been again talking with this with Paul. Probably we can make another like one of the what's the name that the theme for the live stream
yeah,
where
yeah,
what I'm noticing, you're like as front end developer, you're becoming more as you're progressing, you're becoming more limited by your own like choices for API. So that's where things like Strappy come in, the headless CMSs, something where you can actually create that backend, at least some kind of functionality for you. I think that is kind of important because otherwise, I mean, okay, you can go through all the rapid APIs that they have over there. But at the end of the day, something that Paul previously mentioned, you're just getting the data. Okay, you understand
yeah.
that functionality.
Great.
Okay, you can build some nice interfaces. I mean, that's super cool. They'll probably ask you, like, they'll give you the Figma template, and they'll say, "Hey, can you build this?" So it's not a bad quality. But if we're talking about people keep asking, well, what about more complex projects and everything? Well, you'll have to create more complex
Yeah.
backend that can like accept the post requests and all that kind of stuff. What do you think?
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, talk about just be comfortable doing CRUD, because if you could do CRUD, then you could basically do anything you want. And just to give an example, like, at my job, like, I've been asked to, you know, like implement a login with authentication, and then now the next step for me is to implement, you know password reset, forgot password feature, and that's actually pretty complex if you've never done it. And it's kind of, these are some of the things people are going to be asking you guys to do eventually. So if you're just building 10 applications where they're just presenting data to the screen, then you're really hurting yourself. Make your first application. Okay, I'm able to show data from an API. Okay, maybe your second application, I'm able to show data from GitHub and search stuff. And then, like, your third application, because you already built the second one, the third application should be like, well, why if I want to add data to an API? How could I handle that? Or maybe, like, how would I handle authentication? So, what I would say, if you want to progress as a React developer, don't build the same thing like for your portfolio 10 times over, but every time try to iterate on it and add some sort of complexity to it. that will demonstrate your ability as a developer. And that's what I try to do on my Tuesday night live stream, where all the issues that I have at work, I can't obviously show my work code, but I try to share them in a different project where I'm basically talking about these are some of the things you will realistically build at your job. And it's not just showing data, it's getting data, creating data, all this other stuff. Um, but you know what I'm saying? I know like this person doesn't mean it this way, but a lot of times when I hear that question, like I wonder, it's like are they asking it because they want to know what's the least amount of work they have to do to learn something to get a job? It's like, what's the cheapest coffee I could buy type of deal? Because that's the wrong attitude, I think, in web development. And I'm sure this is not how they mean it, but I know a lot of people ask that question because it's like, how can I slide in there? You
Yeah,
know?
no, the moment again, not to. It's very hard to like tell your opinions without sound. I mean, I know that someone is gonna think that oh, he's just being I don't know cocky or whatever. But yeah, every time I hear that kind of what is the minimum thing of doing, it's not going to be very productive. I always like to think of this as look, you're a developer right now, you build applications pretty much, right? So you want to progress and build something, as complex as possible. Again, doesn't have to be, but I mean it's a good goal to have. And if you go the other way where it's like, well, what is the least that I can do? It's just hard to answer, and without sounding like, oh yeah, like again, all the things that we talk about here, it's not because like we know all the answers. It's literally because we like you face them and you just go through with them, and then for me the best kind of experience and best way to how to deal with them is just talk to other people who go through that stuff, right? So when
Yeah.
I talk to Paul about like what he's dealing this week, and then I'm like saying, oh yeah, I'm like handling that and that. For me, it just kind of creates this back and forth where you have the sounding board and you can be like, hey, what about this and what about that? It's not some kind of like, oh yeah, we know all the answers. No
Yeah.
one does. There's
No,
no course.
there's no answers, but the one thing that I would say with me, you got to understand, like those of you who haven't followed my channel, I am 41 now, and I'm about to hit 3 years in the industry. So I got hired like at the beginning when I just turned 39. And the things I'm telling you guys to learn and why I talk about this stuff is because a lot of that stuff I didn't know, and I literally felt like I was going to get fired at my job. And now, like I've been working for 3 years, I kind of know the expectation of a junior to mid-level developer. And so this is why I keep repeating myself, because this is the stuff. I'm not making this up. Like I'm doing this on my day-to-day, work. So if like my work GitHub is obviously private, but if you look at my private commit, it's like incorporating how to reset password with a goddamn mail, and how to forget like and how that works. And guess what we're doing on my live stream? We're incorporating how to reset password with an email. So I'm literally sharing with you guys the stuff that I actually do at work. It's like I'm not making up fake examples to pretend that I'm smart. No, no, I'm actually not as smart. That's why I'm trying to learn this stuff and tell you about it so you guys don't make that same mistake and be like, oh, this is harder than it is. So everybody that I know that just got their first job, they literally call me sweating the next day, being like, Paul, you never said that this was going to be this hard. Like, I thought you learn and then you work. It's like you learn to get a job, but then you better hustle for the next 2 3 months to keep your job. It's like it's just, but that's normal for everybody, like starting out as a junior dev. Not to scare anybody, guys, but that's how it is.
Okay, we have two super chats. And you
Nice.
know what? I think I'm literally lost here. So I think what's happening is because I went to the wrong URL. That's why I was hearing myself and everything. Let me just double check quickly everything. So we have live. Let me see. What do we have over there? We have got this one, I guess.
Yeah, by the way, guys, if you guys haven't smashed the like button, smash the like button, just because you guys are awesome and you're here anyway. And you appreciate when I make myself look like an idiot. That's just say
Yes,
random stuff for like button. You
yes.
know,
Thank you for everyone who liked.
yeah,
And so we got a super chat. Hi, John. Love you from India. Your course got me job. Awesome. That's just
that's amazing.
super nice to hear. Um, as a side note, I've tried to get people who have gotten jobs on some type of like whether they would join us here or in some shape or form, and I'm being unsuccessful. Basically, nobody wants to show up and be on the camera.
So
Not because, again, like if people who know me, it's nothing to do with, like I keep saying, that whether they took my course or not. It's about, look, there's real people who got the jobs, and that is like possible and all that. And I just want to kind of, it's always really, really interesting for me to someone who just went through it, because that's the best person to ask. It's not like, somebody who has been already in industry for 20 years, not because they're bad or whatever. They just don't have that firsthand experience of like, I really want to get some people on who can clearly say, hey, this is what I studied, again, whatever resources I used, and this is how I went through that whole journey, just so people can see like, hey, okay, so he did it or she did it, and everything works. But this is that thing that I like I just talked about showing up. Yeah, I keep writing those emails and I just keep getting back, nope,
I
nope, nope.
but I
So
know why,
it is
and
what it
maybe
is.
it's one of the reasons they're not gonna say to you. But I have a bunch of people that I kind of that followed like what I did. Like I just because I talk about it on my YouTube, and they went through all the steps, they got hired, and then I'm like, they're like, Paul, you really helped me out. I'd love to like come on your live stream and talk about it. And then there's like this pause, the sadness, but like I'm overwhelmed by my work. I think I'm going to get fired. So let me at least work for 3 months. And then in 3 months, you could talk to me. And when I'm established myself in the field, and I think like I appreciate it because they got the job and at least they realized that it's not the end of the road and that they have to do whatever they can do to make themselves stand out at their job in the next 3 months to secure their position for another 3 months so then they could find a better job. I think like that's what it comes down to. It's people actually don't want to talk about coding because they're too busy working.
Yeah, no, no, no. That's definitely a case that Paul is 100% correct. It's being overwhelmed with your first job. So again, this is not like I just think that it's very helpful to see somebody firsthand. That's why I always keep saying going to those meetups, meeting the people who are in the same boat as you. This is just tremendously will help you in the long run, because you'll just see how easier it is if you know that, okay, so there's a person that I can ask maybe, and chances are if he or she is in the same position, he might know the actual answer better than the people
Right,
that you
right.
might think. We have another super chat from Oscar, I want to say. Good job. Yes, thank you, Oscar. There was a very interesting. I don't know even whether that is a question really from Tammy, but she says, when I was reviewing basic JS and they started dealing with adding dynamically to the DOM, ooh, talk about grind and needing to show up. But got through it and understanding it helps with newer methods. And this is again something that we have been pounding, I think, for pretty much every live stream all day long, where
Know the basics.
yeah, those things that they might seem silly, right? When you go to JavaScript and you write whatever, select a document, and then
Yep.
you're adding this manually. But trust me, like once you learn those basic things, and once you understand that in vanilla JS there's no magic like update like it is. I mean, I'm calling this magic, but of course there's technology underneath it, right? But in vanilla JS, you pretty much need to do most of the things manually. But
Yeah.
that's when you get to React and you change one,
Yeah.
state value, and it's just like automatically as you're clicking the button and it's updating. That's where you'll be like, oh wow. So those are those goodies that the React provides. And but going through those stuff and struggling with that, JavaScript is a very good step of
Good
actually getting
practice.
better at React. That's
Yeah.
definitely my opinion.
Yeah, and it's amazing the what React does under the hood because you never know it's a problem unless you try to build something complex with JavaScript where you have so many different things that change and then you need to re-render different parts of the application and that does get overwhelming so quickly. So, yeah.
Okay, we got Alex. First of all, again, thank you, Alex, for showing up from for every live stream pretty much, and like I know it's super early for you, so the fact that you come here is like we're super happy to have you here. And we have here, what CSS framework you suggest me to learn most? Mm, that's an interesting one. I wouldn't go with framework first. I would always go with vanilla CSS, get that one out of the way, and then check again. So here's the thing: when you're talking about like companies, they use CSS frameworks. It's not like I'm not saying, oh, you shouldn't, you should only know CSS or whatever, but you are limiting yourself a little bit if you go hard in the CSS framework route, in my opinion. If you spend that time, I mean, at the moment with Flexbox, with Grid, with everywhere where CSS is going, you can build very nice looking layouts without, sacrificing your arm and a leg. You can
Yep.
do that. It's not, it's just a little bit about applying yourself. Again, I know that frameworks seem a little bit easier in the beginning and all that. I understand it, but you'll do yourself, in my opinion, a way bigger favor because you're not going to limit to a specific framework, whether that is Bootstrap or Tailwind or whatever. With that
Yep.
said, I have used them myself. I not the Tailwind, but Bootstrap and everything, and I like the Tailwind. I like the people behind it, refactoring UI. I keep saying this is the most awesome book ever and whatever. So again, that depends, but just from CSS perspective, I would always start with the CSS, kind of the vanilla CSS.
Yeah, well, that's 100%. And for me, like in my experience, the only reason I will start to use Bootstrap is because I'm more curious with not writing the CSS, but I want to prototype something really quickly. So I just want to use whatever classes they have because I'm more concerned with JavaScript, or the at least getting the application to do the things that I want to do. But 100%, you need to learn HTML, CSS, definitely understand the basics and fundamentals. And what I found out a lot of times, like when you do work at a job that uses a framework, you're going to learn all that stuff at the job. You know what I mean? And so definitely don't learn Bootstrap if you don't know CSS, though. That's 100% right. 100%.
Yeah, that is a very good use case. If you're like, I know that some people on my channel, I've been something. Um, Basically, the conversation was like, okay, yeah, this is a good CSS project, but I'm just gonna use Bootstrap because for me
Yeah.
it's faster and
Yeah.
it's way less code and blah blah. And like I was just starting to ask, so why would you think so? And then if you're a backend developer who just needs some kind of quick prototype, yes,
Right.
of course. But
Yeah.
then I definitely wouldn't suggest going with Tailwind because in my experience,
No, it's
it's
too
a
much.
nicer look. It's more custom look in my opinion than the Bootstrap, but also but with Bootstrap you can just get quicker with less classes. My
Yeah.
question to you though is, Paul, like when you talk about, like, this is kind of the point that I always try to make, but when you're talking about, let's say, Bootstrap website, in order to make it custom, there's no really other way how to just apply vanilla CSS, correct?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
if you want to look
right. You have
different
to.
than
Yeah, you have to override it with like CSS, and then and then you could throw theming on it to, like, if you want to retheme it with different colors easier, you could basically change like like whatever Bootstrap colors are, you could add and override custom colors with it. But for me, like what I'm doing, like on this project on Tuesday night, I started it with React Bootstrap, basically React style Bootstrap components, just because I wanted not to waste time talking about CSS, because to me it's like, let's get the functionality working, let's get the minimum viable product out there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and redo everything with styled components, so then I could, you know everything that I do I could reuse in other applications as well. But I didn't want to waste time, like, okay, let's write the CSS, let's copy and paste this form from Bootstrap. That's just way easier and faster when you're developing, because otherwise I would spend, I don't know, 3 weeks to do all the CSS. I don't know, like, because I work slow, and then by the time we get to JavaScript, React, whatever. So for me, it's just quick prototyping. That's why I use it.
No, I 100% agree with you. As far as the project, like the MERN project that I'm working on right now, it's the functionality is one thing, the backend is another thing. But as far as getting the look and CSS and those small things, and especially if you have like multiple layouts and multiple
Yeah.
screens, and it's
By the
way
way,
more complex.
I was gonna say, I don't understand all the hate for styled components. It just doesn't. I don't understand. Like, everybody I talk to, I hate styled component, and for me, it's like, I created something at CodePen and I literally copy and pasted it into my React application, and it just works. To me, like that, I like just modularity of it. Like, what are you saying? What are you saying to me
Well,
right now? It doesn't make sense.
again, this is kind of a topic that we can definitely spend another 2 3 hours on. But it stems from, there's a lot of this misconception that people who use styled components hate CSS, which is
That's
I
not
don't know
true.
how
Not
two of
true at
them
all.
go
That's not true.
together.
How does that? Who came up with
Yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah. It well because and it's the same thing. Like you see again another great topic that we can do about that. There is a movement of just going vanilla jazz, right? So there's this. Well, why we have such a lag with the frameworks, and this is just messes up everybody. Why when we started, like let's say 10 years ago, basically that's their argument. The people who are making this, where there was only HTML and CSS and JavaScript, and now the person who is starting out, they need to know React, they need to know Next.js, like we talked about in the last one. So it's kind of well unfair and whatever. And but there is this pushback of like it's not actually there's this joke going around that oh yeah it's so much harder to build a website in like 2022 than it was such and such, and I like that Scott Tolinsky from Syntax, and just
Yeah,
on his Twitter he's like no it's not, and that's it. And then when you listen to their podcast, like what is their reasoning is actually like makes a lot of sense, where you cannot, like in today's kind of web there's so much like media and all that kind of stuff that okay you can come to job interview with just HTML and CSS website and say that oh yeah you see how fast it is, yeah, but okay, but show me how you can deal with images, because
yeah,
that's the real life scenario, like as a simple example, right? So
yeah,
I mean this is again something like a big what's the name, a rabbit hole that we can get into and
yeah,
probably can get a lot of hate, but from like I don't also understand where using styled components just add a little bit of easier way how you can set up the CSS, in my opinion. Like
yeah. And the
less
modularity
clutter.
of it is like
Yeah.
super, super good. Like I literally had one project and I moved the file and everything was fine. And then I just passed some props and it just changed whatever the thing I wanted to change. It was like amazing.
What about?
But
Oh,
hold on,
sorry.
with that being said, I just want to say like you should know CSS, probably SAS, and be familiar with CSS modules because basically you're gonna learn it on your job. But I just don't understand the hate for style components.
Yeah, no, it's the same as going to be. There's going to be a certain
Yeah,
corner who's going to hate everything that has to do with React or whatever. I think it just comes with the territory. It's the same as how if someone is successful, there's going to be 9 people who love him, and
yeah,
then there's one
yeah,
who's going to just
exactly,
hate him for
exactly,
just because
exactly,
he's successful. So
exactly.
I think there's listen, but what about styled components? So do you keep in the same file, or you export just the styled component into separate folder?
So I worked at my last job. What they did is they literally created a separate folder. I forgot what they called it, but it was literally all the like they basically built a library of like base style components, and then we would call them and reuse them. And I thought that was like too granular, especially for the stuff that I'm doing at home. So what I do, like like right now, if I'm lazy, I will literally keep the styling inside that same JavaScript file. If it gets too huge, I will have a folder, let's say video player or whatever, and then I will have video player.jsx for the JSX, and then I'll have style.js or whatever you want to call it, and I would put the style code there. And then what I'll do for all the global stuff, I'll just do one whatever that provider is for the global styling to wrap your whole application. I'll just do that. And so whatever I don't need, like that I need to be global, I put in that. But everything else that needs to be specific to that application, like the file, I would put in there. And then I guess if the app was too complex and I'm seeing like, well, the button repeats 1,000 times, then I would move the button out and then reuse it. But I'm still debating on that because like for my this is from my personal standpoint, I could be totally wrong. Like I don't want anything from that file count on anything else from like a separate file because I'm too lazy. So if I made something in CodePen and I just want to move it and have it work. Like so I don't want to have like these inner dependencies in my case. I just want to have this is like I guess like let's say this is the about section. So if you move this thing, this is what it's going to be. Like I don't want to have this about section has 3 other components that are relying on it from another file, if that makes sense. Like in my opinion.
No, for me it's exactly the same. I also like to set up everything in the same file where I can see the functionality there, the styling
Yeah.
there. But the reason why I was asking because it's pretty much in the every like as far as I know when it comes to production, like as far when we're talking about bigger companies and everything, like all the interviews I've been on and everything, it's really about, they prefer this kind of modular approach, whether
Yeah.
it's kept in a separate file
Yeah,
or a
it's
folder,
base styling, like
or
whatever.
it's
Yeah.
the entire, like you said, oh, this button we are using here and here
Yeah.
and here. And I'm actually thinking about, like, for this the MERN course, the first project, this is I'm planning on doing, where basically, because otherwise it comes out that I'll have to copy and paste for every component every time I create when I make a
Yeah.
video. So it's easier for me just in the beginning copy everything from the final one, and
Yep.
then when you're building, then it's easier to kind of set it up. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and I think if it gets like a huge application, then you're like on like you coming to this idea that, oh, I need to build my own UI library with style components, and then you create it separately when that need arises. But for but yeah, that's what I saw like at work when our application was huge, so it made sense to do that.
no, in that case for sure, it's again, when you're talking about production, the bigger the application is going to be, the
Yep.
more people are going to work, and the more modular it's going to be. So there's no like, okay,
Yeah.
so he messed it
Yeah.
up somewhere or something in this file, and then just
Right.
you
The
don't.
issue with that, I'm going to tell you, is that developers that don't understand that clearly, they will make logic changes in code, not inside the base component, but they will write some pseudo logic where it gets the thing, but then it does something to it. And then, like to untrained eye, you're like, oh, but the functionality works. But then you're like, well, it should work in all the buttons, but it only works in the thing that you worked on. Why? And then they're
Mm.
like, what do you mean it should work in all the buttons? I'm like, because this is a base component button right there, but you changed it like, and so like if people that don't know, like they make changes in like the wrong place. So like the guy I worked for, every time he saw that, he would like write really bad comments for people. But to me, it was really funny. And the funniest part was because I like kind of like listened to what he said about these base components, that I was smarter than everybody. I just knew that if you need to create a like a functionality, change it, and you want it to be in all the places, make sure you do it in the base component. And the funniest part was that's the only part of the whole meeting I heard. So I never had that issue because I always knew to look at base components. So I'm like the most junior developer. Everybody there is like with like a CSS, like computer, like science degrees, super duper smart guys, C++ guys who are transitioning to web, whatever. But every time he would be like, why can't you just do it like Paul? He always goes to the right place to change it. And I used to get so mad because I'm like, now everybody hates me. And I'm like the most junior developer there. And I was like, Jesus Christ. And I
What?
think he was doing it on purpose to troll me too. He's like, Paul always fixes it at the right place. Uh,
Yeah, being a teacher's pet is horrible.
yeah.
Is that the proper teacher's pet, right? Meaning,
Yeah.
like, no, basically,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
use you as an example. It's
Yeah.
like, always, they're like,
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
do that to me.
Fun, funny story. Like a lot of people ask, like, what do you need to know as a junior developer? This is like, you can't make this stuff up. This is my second week. I just figured out how to look stuff up in like a SQL database, which I never even used prior to getting that job. My boss pulls me into the meeting literally in front of everybody and says, okay, Paul, you're going to be the lead on implementing security with our ASP.NET and C Sharp like backend. This is what we need to do. We have to mimic the exact like policy and procedures like the C++ desktop code. And by the way, the C++ code is already written. So if you ever get stuck, just go to the C++ code. You could easily do that. You could trace the code. You have Visual Studio, and everybody inside is laughing. And I'm like, I'm getting fired tomorrow for sure. And then I literally had to go to my boss. And this was, by the way, the scariest thing for me because I was like, oh my God, I didn't know if this was normal or not. So I literally, after everybody left, I go like, you hired me 2 weeks ago, and you hired me because I knew React, right? That right. I like just want to see a nod. And then you told me you need to learn C sharp as you work here. And he's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm like, what you just described means that I already know C sharp, C++, and all this other stuff. And he's like, all right, Paul, I'll find somebody else. But I was like, oh my God, like, this is ridiculous. So, you know,
I
don't be
don't,
shy to stand up for yourself sometimes.
I don't envy you. I
Dude,
probably,
I
I don't
I
know how
I
I would
turned
have that
white. I almost
conversation.
passed out. I went home, probably cried because I was like, tomorrow, like, I don't know what to do. And then like everybody's like, yeah, Paul, you're doing security, right? Because the senior guy, he's like, it's gonna take me 6 months to do. And he's the senior guy, super smart, and he ended up doing it, and it literally took him 6 months to do. But my
Imagine it.
boss took me like a couple of weeks. It'll be done. It'll be great. You know.
Imagine if you would start bossing the senior around after
Yeah.
that first meeting.
I have another funny story. Like I don't want to make this about the funny stories, but this is a good one. So every interview you go to, always dress for success, 100%. So I had a really good suit on, very properly dressed, did a really good interview, and then for the next, like, I literally, for all the time I worked there, I always wore my suit and jacket all the time with a tie, just because I'm like, I'm new. I'm just going to be the best of myself. I don't care how somebody else's dresses. But here's the funny story. My like fourth week in, we have a meeting. I'm in a nice suit and tie. Everybody else who's been there for 20 years, they don't care. They're wearing like pajamas basically. And then
Basically.
this new guy comes in and he does an interview. And after he's done, he comes in and starts shaking my hand. He's like, I look forward to working with you, blah, 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 blah. And he's trying to impress me. So I come to find out he thought that I was like the manager that oversees the project. And so he wanted to get on my good side. And then I'm like, no, I'm just a junior developer. It was so funny.
No,
So,
about dressing, I actually kind of this is where we have what you were saying a few live streams ago when we had disagreement. You said what's the drama or how
yeah,
you
yeah, YouTube
described it?
drama.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, drama
that
alert, drama alert. So
drama alert. Yeah.
I don't know. For me, I actually disagree with you about dressing up because every interview I've been, even just going in a simple polo, you just stand out because, like you say, everyone is there in a
You got to be pretty
t-shirt.
good then, John. You got to be pretty good then.
It's a t-shirt that's and I'm just every time I come home and I'm like, no, this is the last time when I'm wearing something that's not like because I think it's just like idiotic or I mean again
All
in
right.
my opinion I
I
like
know what's going on there. I know what's going on there, John. I know
so I
what's
don't
going
know
on
I'm
there.
kind of I'm still probably I wouldn't like wouldn't go in a t-shirt but yeah every
Yeah,
time I'm
I
come back
know
I'm
what's
like
going on there,
whatever.
John. Basically, this is how it goes. Like, as I see it at work, it's like the more you know, the less you wear. So if you're showing up to work naked, you're like fucking. I don't mean to swear. You're a genius. You know what I'm saying? But for me, being like brand new, I felt like I needed to wear a suit. And to be honest, it hid a bunch of my stuff that I didn't know because the guy saw me. Oh, he's wearing a suit. But if I wear a t-shirt, he probably asked me all the algorithmic questions that I didn't know. So the
That's
smarter
true,
you're, like
that's true.
I would say I think okay, a real answer to this: research the company that you're applying and see how people dress for the interviews. Basically, that's what I would say. But
Yeah, that's a very good advice. And then
yeah,
if you cannot find something, then all jokes aside, like just wear something that you're comfortable. Again, you don't need to
yeah,
go
100%.
pretend some like if you're comfortable with some again, don't go in Halloween costume, please. But then say,
That's as
but,
Barney.
but
I love
but in
you.
general, just be mindful of what's happening. But yeah, for me, it's always been the case where I feel like oh, just like why I overdressed for this if it's this no one cares here anyway. Okay, let's get back to questions. Hi, John and Paul. Two questions. How important you think data okay, skills you can read the question visualization, I guess, as D3 library as for aspiring developer to land the job. Also, how complex projects should be in our portfolio. Well, Walter, we did the last live stream where we talked about portfolio. So as far as quite the second question, I don't want to make this into 15 minutes that we already covered. So please go back to the previous live stream. We covered kind of that all in detail as far as the complexity and everything. And when it comes to D3, unless it's a specific company, I really would focus more on building
Yeah,
web apps instead of going D3. I know that as far as I know, it's quite a bit of a rabbit hole. So it
yeah,
might seem easy in the beginning, but I
yeah.
personally wouldn't spend my time on that. That's my
So
personal.
what I would say, if you can't build anything yourself, like don't even try. Like I haven't learned D3 yet. And I know somebody who was working on a specific project which specifically requires data visualization. So D3 was the best choice for them. So what I would say is don't, like John said, don't learn it if you don't know how to build basic applications to get a job. And a lot of times you will get hired and, they'll say like, oh, we need a project with D3. And then you could start learning it on the job. That's happens in like a lot of cases, you know?
Okay, we have one for Paul. This is As a front end developer, are you working mostly by yourself on projects or with other developers
Oh my
on a
God.
team?
I have the most untraditional journey. First of all, I got hired at a company where they literally threw you to the sharks. And if you just heard my story about setting up security and the stuff that I didn't know, like it was very toxic company and it was so stressful for the first year and a half. So I found a company that's less stressful, but the at my company currently, I'm responsible for building the whole application for like that. Like they gave me the requirements for the need, and all I have is a senior developer who basically gives me mock-ups of like what the application should be, and tells me what the logic should be. Not like this is exactly how you write it, but he's like, yeah, when I click this, this should happen. That's it. There's no like coding suggests. Like he didn't tell me how to magically make this email thing work that I had struggled last week. But basically, I'm responsible to implement the UI and write all that logic myself. And if I don't know anything, like I'll go to the head developer and be like, hey, I'm not sure how to do this. And then he'll be like, well, you know, maybe you should try this. But it's very like brief 5 minute meeting, and I will never go to him to say I don't know how to do this until I at least spend like a couple of hours really making sure I understood the problem and knowing if I really tried my best to solve it. But basically at my job, like I'm responsible for this whole application, which I'm not sure if that's like normal transition. But at the same time, just to give the caveat, I would say I'm like a mid-level developer now, so maybe that's what mid-level developers do. Like I have no idea. Actually, like I still don't know what's a junior developer and what a mid-level developer. I have no idea
What's the
what those are.
difference?
Yeah,
Yeah,
what's
me
the difference? I
neither.
have no idea. I don't know. I just know that things get harder. I just know that. It's just like um
But in your jobs, let me ask you this: was more? Did you work on your own on a feature, or there was more times when you actually worked with someone together
no.
on a feature? So
No,
it's
no, it's always by
that's
myself
that,
on the
that's what I was
feature.
gonna say. That
Yeah, yeah,
that's
always, yeah, 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 always by myself, always on the feature. This is why every time like I come in this stream, my stream, I always talk about you got to practice building stuff. You got to practice building stuff. You have to do the work yourself because at your job, people not going to tell you how to do stuff. They'll give you like feedback and then based on your question, but they're not going to tell you how to do it. And that's where you also, like, when you have a problem that you're trying to figure out, don't just go and, like, I don't know how to do this. Like, you have to go to be like, okay, this is what I tried. I read like these 3 articles. This is how they implemented it, but I'm still not sure how to do it. And then you say, when I implemented this specific thing, am I on the right track? So it can't be like, how do you do this? It's like, you got to give more context to the problem. And that's something like, you know, you don't get unless you build stuff yourself and you kind of experience that through trial and error of like having bugs, looking stuff online, reading stuff, then implementing in your code, fixing the bugs. Like you got to do that yourself, you know, and that's where experience comes.
yeah. I 100% agree with everything that Paul
I
just
hope I
said.
didn't scare anybody. Like, okay, I worked like one time in a restaurant as a busboy and I got paid like $8 an hour. And then it's a very easy job. You take a bucket, you fill it up with dirty dishes, and you bring it to the dishwasher. Okay, and you get five, like eight, whatever it was, $6 an hour plus tips. When you work as a developer, if they're paying you $150,000, are you doing the same job as a busboy? No, you're not. You're required to provide at least that value back to the company. So you're going to be solving like complex problems. And this is kind of like what I want to say to people. Yeah, maybe you start as junior, you're making like 45, 55,000, but as you progress, like you need to keep like showing your value to the company for them to keep you there. And so like you cannot do the same stuff. You constantly have to solve higher level problems. Like I was telling John like a couple of weeks ago, like I had to figure out how to calculate the difference of a bunch of ranges and dates that are overlapping, but it could be 3 overlaps, 10 overlaps, or no overlaps. And I had to write the logic that determines that and keeps track of that. And until that time, like I've never done that before, but these are some of the complex problems that they ask you to do. So you're always going to be learning, and always just assume if you're going to be developer, things are not going to get easier. You're just going to get better at development and coding, that you're going to be able to figure out those complex problems quicker, you know.
Yeah, we have. First of all, we'll find a another question, and then I need to kick off one person off, and blah blah blah. So I was gonna answer this one. So a lot of us learn from your courses, John. How do you learn? Docs, other courses, people. Pretty much everything. Pretty much everything. A little bit of everything. I have an idea of what I want to build, and then I just go through the resources of how to get there. Docs probably the most. That's always been kind of the go-to and everything. And what about you, Paul? When you need
Yeah.
to?
So like most of the time now, like I'm literally just trying stuff and then reading the documentation. Um, that's pretty much 80% of my time.
Hmm. Okay, it doesn't seem like I cannot find that person that I want to kick off. Maybe he's gonna show up again. Someone. Okay, let me get this one. Someone suggests me learn Node.js, like just knowing the surface only before learn React. Do you agree? No, I don't agree. Learning Node.js before React does not really make sense to me. I mean, again, what we're talking about, you should understand the kind of how to install a package, probably because well, that's what you'll use with npm and all that. But in general, I think it makes way more sense. It's very useful to learn that as you're already good with React, because then you'll understand way more about the like kind of what's happening on the other side when you make those requests. That has definitely been a case where as the more you learn about Node, the more you'll understand when you're building the React application of like when you're making that request, what's happening on the other side. But I would definitely wouldn't say that that's something you should do in the beginning. Not at all. What do you think?
The only like other possibility, I would say, you hate front end, you don't want to look at it, you don't care about front end, you really like working with data tables, so you learn like SQL and stuff like that, and like you just want to be a back end developer only. I mean, that's like the only case I would say you could start with just back end technologies. But even that right now is probably not even a good advice because all the front end and back end seems to overlap with every year that goes by. So there's like that you kind of need to know both. And I don't know. For me, I started with front end because it was easier. I got hired as a front end developer, and then I transitioned to learning Node and learning back end. And to me, it was the quickest path. You know.
And then we have, and also, what sources do you recommend to stay up to date with the latest developments in web dev? To me, it's definitely podcasts where you kind of understand where the industry is kind of moving, like what's coming out, what's new, and whatever, and then you just decide of how much time you can spend. I just learned about this. There's this thing Astro Build, which is like basically a way faster result as far as the project because there's way less code. But this is again one of those things where do I have time to invest? Do I have time to invest in that and actually research that? And since I know that it's still not even in version one. I think I checked the docs for like 15 minutes. I don't know, a few days ago. So don't quote me on that. But basically, it's not even stable. So I know for sure that it's going to change. Yeah, the idea is great and everything. And that's how I pretty much started with Gatsby. I think it was version two when it came out. And that definitely, I would say, was very great because I was able to build a bunch of cool stuff with Gatsby. But I would say, as far as staying up to date, for sure, podcasts is a way to go. Find the one that you like the most. Again, you don't need to spend even that much time, but that will help you tremendously in the long run. Uh, at least for me, that's how I stay up to date. What about you?
What's your favorite
Oh,
podcast
you know
watcher?
this,
Like, if you could
Paul.
only find one, I know, but
You
like
know
maybe
this,
maybe
Paul.
people don't know.
Syntax FM. Syntax
Yeah,
FM.
yeah. So
Syntax
syntax
F-
is a really good one.
Syntax
Yep.
FM for all things dev. Plus, they cover also some basically some other stuff as well. And then as far as just having some kind of idea what it's like to start a business, I like the indie hacker. That to
Yeah.
me is because you literally can hear about real people, like again, not some major, I don't know, investors or whatever. It's just real people who are doing the work and who are building the companies. And to me, that's, hearing that and then looking at their products and getting the ideas of like, okay, so maybe I can implement that in such and such project, and maybe I can showcase to people how they can build that. That to me is kind of the best one. And yeah, syntax hands down
Yes,
to
amazing podcast. I know a
it's
lot of developers that listen to it.
I
It's not
think, I
just
mean,
me and John.
it's hands down. I
Yeah,
mean, some of the more other popular ones are is, I believe it's the dev shop or some kind of shop where, anyway, yeah, there's that one. There's Ladybug. I believe that's for like, I believe that's some. I know that there are very successful girls behind that podcast, but I've
yeah.
never listened to it. But yeah, syntax seems to be the go to, I think, for most people.
Yeah, I just saw a random, not a random comment, but I appreciate this. JR Bugs, he says, working on a side project while listening to you guys. Sorry for being quiet tonight. Wish I could drop more than one like. Yeah, definitely more likes is awesome. But what the most important part, I like that he's actually building a project. Like, I like that. That, see, like, one of the craziest things happened to me the other day. Because to me, like, I assume that, in my mind, like, everybody who's on you, like, okay, I apologize in advance. Like, most people
Where
watch
are we
YouTube.
going with this?
I apologize in advance, but most people who watch YouTube are probably like, because I used to be this way. I used to be lazy. I used to never do anything. I used to never build anything. So usually people go on YouTube to waste time and pretend like they're learning something and like never do anything. And then they wonder, why can't I get a job? Well, because I'm on YouTube all the time, not doing anything. So this is bad for YouTube channels. Sorry, John. But the point is, like, you guys, like, eventually I was like, I have to build stuff, build projects. So I've been doing this stream where I talk about building this project, right? And I'm building this project, I'm doing it. And I know that probably 99.9% of people, they're just going to look at that live, be like, whatever, who cares? We had some fun. We made fun of Paul. Look at how he's failing. But this guy scheduled one on one with me, and he opens up and he literally starts with like, Paul, I've been watching your live stream building your dev hunt project, and when I was implementing the GraphQL in my project, I ran into this issue, and I didn't even have an answer for him because I was surprised that there was somebody that actually decided to take the initiative and build the project that I was building. But the funny story about that is that my live stream is not a step by step guide on how to do it. So that means not only that he like watched the videos, he also recreated like a big part of that project himself. And so what I was getting to a long story is like, I appreciate when people actually build projects because I believe that's the best way to learn and to get a job. I just want to get that off my chest for anybody who's going to ask next stream, how do you get a job in web development? I just wanted to get that off my chest just to kind of say it today, you know?
No, I mean, that one is kind of interesting. Where, first of all, I'm not gonna say I don't watch 20,000 like videos on YouTube. I don't. But I don't want to make this about like, oh, you should become a monk or nun or
Yeah.
whatever. For
Yeah.
me, the best approach is to kind of set some kind of limits. Where, look, this is this is useful stuff that I want to do, and then this is something that that is just maybe you can get some good info out of it. So what I'm trying to say is, building projects will always, hands down, be way more productive than watching yet another how to become a developer and whatever. And like spending that time. I know it doesn't seem like that, but it definitely is going to be the case.
The
Now,
YouTube police is going to come after us.
well, I mean, it's not like we're trying to be their audience. So, I mean, and at the end, but again, it doesn't mean I'm not like, oh, you shouldn't watch any. There's some video pops up. I'm like, okay, so let me take a look
Yeah.
and whatever, and you might take something away from that. But again, like my biggest kind of thing is what I always suggest people don't make your own decisions. If, for example, you watch something, then try to at least gather a little bit more data and then just kind of make your own decision about it, instead of, well, he said this, so that means. And the same goes for us. Okay, we
Yeah.
can we
No,
can say, yeah,
yeah.
like I wouldn't be saying stuff that I'm saying if I didn't believe in that. But at the same time, maybe your case is in some way, shape, or form different. So
Yeah.
it's definitely, as far as entertainment, I think it's better than cable TV.
Oh,
but
100%. Hands down.
you do need to kind of be mindful of like where you're going with that in the long run.
Yeah, like I love YouTube because obviously, like I have a channel on YouTube, you have a channel on YouTube, but you also uh, have amazing courses on Udemy. So YouTube is not your main gig, but like, and neither is mine. But the thing is, it's like I talk about exactly the things that I'm going through. But at the same time, I know if I just watch 10 hours of YouTube, that's 10 hours of work I did not do on my project. And so I hope like most people real of course people realize that. Of course all of you guys know that you have to put in the work. I don't even have to say that. Like all
And
of you
you'll
guys are
and
going.
you'll see as you start working on stuff, you just won't have time for that. You
Yeah,
just won't, which is perfectly normal. And Tech Rally showed up. Uh, Hear my name,
yeah, he
love it,
loves
love it.
style components. Are Tech Rally's favorite. He was telling me the
Does he,
other
or
day that he's
is he
gonna.
a hater? Which one is
Yeah,
it?
he's a hater.
He's
He's
a
a hater.
hater.
He's a
Oh
style
wow.
components hater. But
Okay.
he keeps but whatever, we all will have our things.
Hey John, do I need to remember every attribute in label in HTML? No, no. This is something that we're gonna cover in few live streams. This is gonna be our main topic where you don't. Short answer, no. You need to kind of again. I suggest just understanding basic form idea where there's a form element, there's inputs, there's different type of inputs, but then for every input for every type there's also different variations when it comes to the attributes. And as far as labels, I used to kind of, not purposely, but I just for my UI I kind of skip them. Now I'm in a phase where I enjoy putting the labels. That kind of gives me the idea of, okay, this is a password one, this is this one, that one. So I'm back on a kind of label train where I'm trying to force them as much as I can. So I find them like useful as far as just. But again, there's some like some UIs where you pretty much use a placeholder instead. So, but I definitely wouldn't. Again, if you understand of how to set up basic form with basic input, trust me. Again, point that we keep hammering all the time. As your projects get more complex, yes, that's when you'll go back. That's when you, and then it's gonna be easy. You'll be like, okay, how do I get this input and that one, and then just get the data and then put it in your project. What do you think?
Yeah, yeah, definitely agree.
Okay, so we have what's good motivation to show up every day. Intermediate coding is very challenging. Help. Uh, Oh, that's what I mean. Again, this is gonna sound extremely cheesy, probably, but for me, the best like I there's two things that I enjoyed. First of all, the fact that, and I don't know how it's helpful is gonna be for this question, not because I'm again, it's there's some down days or whatever, but uh, for me it was first of all the easiest job that I ever had. Like because I like the job, I like doing it. So pretty much every day I can just look back, and I always said like worst day in coding when I spent all day chasing a bug that I couldn't was the best day compared to any other work. So that for me kind of doesn't require that much kind of motivation there. And then also just the fact that you can type few lines of code and then there's something happening. Actually, there's a program, there's an app, there's a website, there's that to me is like feels like what, like this is incredible. um Apart from that, I don't know, just have some kind of daily structure or
Routine.
something.
Yeah.
So it's like one of the things that we keep going back, not because I'm good at jiu-jitsu, but because Paul is. But I like this idea of like martial arts where you need to put in the work. You're not going to show up in 2 days and then you'll be a black belt and never. The process of, let's say, learning one move. And again, I don't want to talk for Paul because it sounds ridiculous when
No,
the
it's all
white
good, and it's true. It's
when
all
the white
true.
belt is telling the black belt stories. But this like just mind blow what's mind like blowing for me is that you literally learn this one thing, right? And you first you need to practice, just by rolling, right? So you just do the drilling. Then there's some resistance, then there's full-blown sparring,
Full
and
blown
all,
sparring.
yeah, and it's like all steps. Just because you can do it on like pretty much dead person, that like
Yeah.
in a sparring the person turns around and then good luck. You're like everything that you learn, you're like whoa, whoa, whoa. So again, we kind of wandered off, but
No,
it's
no, it's
really
actually
hard for
not.
me to answer that,
No,
quite
you didn't
honestly.
wander off. Like full sparring in jiu-jitsu is equivalent of me talking about build projects from scratch. It's hard, it's not going to work the way you want it, but that's where real experience comes from. So, I was talking to this girl who's been doing jiu-jitsu for a while. Like there's white belt, blue belt, purple belt, brown belt, black belt, and she's a purple belt. And here's the funny thing with jiu-jitsu. I don't care how strong you are, I don't care how good you are. Like don't get me wrong, guys. When it comes to violence, of course, guns, weapons, bombs, whatever, I get that, knife, but I'm talking about like fair competition of strength, like like fighting or wrestling with someone. If you're a beginner, a white belt, you will never beat a blue belt, like unless you wrestled at some point in your life. There's just no chance. And to me, like I like that, because it's like saying if I study, something for a couple of weeks, like you'll never be a web developer. It's like the same thing. You got to put in the practice and the hustle. But the more like I learn coding, like literally there's like direct correlation to jujitsu. It is the funniest thing. And I just
That's
see your
that
two
that
cats. They,
Yeah, yeah.
they're
They
awesome.
this is their time of the
Dude,
day when they
off
decide.
topic, off topic,
Well,
off topic.
yeah, because all
Uh,
day they have been scared
not
because of
you,
my.
not you off topic. I'm about to tell you something off topic that I want to know if you did. Have you
Okay,
ever Googled like videos for cats on YouTube
no,
and
no.
then leave
No,
them on
not
your
because
screen?
I enjoy, like, I like funny cat videos, but it's
No,
just
no,
never been like
no, no.
Google
It's
like
not for you. It's for your cat. It's
no,
like so
never.
I just recently did. I'm gonna send you one video. My cats are so silly. So I got this video of a fish tank and there's a fish swimming in it. I mean, if you like your monitor, don't do it. But my cats literally watch the fish. They see the fish on the screen and then they try to catch it.
I think I saw that you posted on Twitter or something,
Yeah,
didn't you?
yeah, I did. I did. That's just so it's just funny. People ask me why I didn't do like when I code what I do. Sometimes that's what happens. Make my cats chase my mouse or like fish tank, whatever. It's funny.
Yeah, no, they have been sleeping all day because the toddler is pretty much terrorizing them all day. Not that she doesn't even need to do anything. She just shows up in the room and they're
And
like
then
both of
it's
them
like,
are
oh,
like
get
this, and
out
then
of here,
like
run,
one is
run.
under the bed, the other one is like high on a shelf. So of course the
Yeah,
moment like we put her to sleep, then
yeah,
the day starts. So yeah,
yeah,
no, no, no,
yeah,
those two.
yeah.
But to kind of, yeah, for me that's why it was so appealing, because I saw so many things that are the same, and that's why I actually think that like I definitely contribute the success that Paul has had to the added discipline behind it. Because in order to make it there, it really becomes kind of like it's not uncommon for when you go to the jiu-jitsu gym that people show up actually there 5 days a week, right? And they have kids, they have family there, but
Yeah.
this is their kind of sanctuary. They come there in the morning, evening, whatever, and they do the work. They enjoy the process of like literally, you're beaten by everybody, and then you slowly kind of like, and that to me is the same with the coding, where pretty much every starts from that point zero. The only
Yeah.
difference is that some people have been doing it longer, that's all. And they and when you see somebody like being very good at something, like my thing that I always remember is they have just faced those problems way more than you have. That's it. That's the only
Right.
kind of difference that there is, because he already knows, okay, yeah, so you need to do this one. There's no like,
And
again, like Paul says, there's no magic pill there.
what you just said, like, let me back up here. You just said they faced that problem more than you have. They did that thing more than you have. So if someone says like, "Oh, like how do I get better at JavaScript?" Like just do that thing more often. Like in the most simplest sense, like how do I get better at CSS and design? Well, do CSS and design more and more, and you're gonna get better. Like my improvement in JavaScript was never like asking people how do I get better with JavaScript. It's actually sitting at home on my computer for the 2-3 hours a day and working on JavaScript. I think that's how you get the experiences, by doing the thing that you're doing. Uh, which is funny story. I took a break from exercise for a long time, and then my fiance saw my recent picture, and she's like, "What happened?" And so now I have to start jogging and deadlifts again to bring myself back to normal. And guess what I do? I don't do like a lot. I just do every day a little bit, and I'm going to every day continue to do that, and little by little increase the intensity. Just that is literally just do the thing over a period of time until you get it done, like, or learn the thing or accomplish a goal, or lose 20 pounds, like in my case, like whatever, everybody's different, it's fine.
No, I'm also like, as far as any kind of fitness, for me, it starts with just come up with some kind of plan. Like, don't commit to 2 hours a day and then I'm gonna
Yeah,
be
yeah.
dieting and then I'm gonna be doing this. Then commit to something and then slowly, the same as coding, just progress. And then as you go through that road, it's just gonna show you. Yeah, totally agree. Do you guys have a plan to make video about slicing? From web design, from Figma or Adobe XD for to the front end. Also, a startup company really don't care about CS degree. The second question, I cannot tell you about what every startup company is going to
Yeah,
be looking
yeah,
for. I
yeah.
mean, in theory, you can say that they will just need get somebody to work, but I mean, yeah, no, of course, the bigger company, they might have the different stricter requirements and everything. So
Yeah.
you can say that the startups maybe don't
I
care about that
I think it
much,
depends
but
on the company. Yeah, it depends on the
but
company.
I would say they need like working hands to get the job done.
So
And
so
sorry,
so my 2 cents was like every job I applied to which required a CS degree I didn't get, but the job that didn't I did. So I just apply to everything, and see what happens. But
yeah,
some
but that
jobs they have a hard requirement, which is so crazy to me. It's
yeah, but
like,
I'd still would apply even
oh yeah,
without the
yeah,
degree,
please
and
apply.
yeah, so
So
that's
I talked to this recruiter. She said the funniest thing to me. She's like, I go to her like my was specifically like this. There are a bunch of companies that required a computer science degree, and what you recommend for people that don't have one. And she's like, well, a lot of those companies, they do have hard stops where they're not going to hire anybody without a computer science degree. And then she says, but 9 out of the 10 people that I recommended to the company who didn't get have degrees, they got hired. So I was like, basic logic here is that apply to whatever because you just don't know.
yeah, uh that's definitely the case where I would apply even without the degree, because it's not like, I mean, there's gonna be a bunch of requirements that you
Yeah,
know
I want to bring this one up because it's kind of appropriate. But Andrew Ladd says, when I was a music student, it was expected to spend 3 to 4 hours every day in a
Wow.
practice room, which didn't include rehearsal, and everything else took place during the day. So, funny story. This is like, I just gonna say this because this all comes down to you doing the work over a period of time. So I was living in Russia, and in Russia, this was back under communism. It doesn't matter for the story, but I just like to say it. But they had
Who
a
doesn't
music.
like the communism?
No, no, there's lots of funny stories I have about communists. I was, uh, they randomly have people to see who would be good at some sport, and
Mm.
so I was part of like gymnastics, like class where the head of the Communist Party came and they wanted to see you perform to see who's going to be the next like gymnast, which lucky I failed badly because apparently like that's no life you want to have. But I had a music teacher who says you have the musical ear, you have a lot of talent, so we're going to enroll you in this piano school, blah 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 blah. I started going to school. It's very strict, but I was only there for 2 weeks before we moved to America. And after we moved to America, I just did not do any piano lessons. I didn't do anything, and I didn't practice. And I still suck at music, even though younger I had some sort of talent for it in terms of like, or aptitude for it. But because I've never practiced, I've never learned, I never like put in the time, like I suck at it. I can't do any of it. And so it's kind of interesting how the things that you practice, you get better at. I don't know why I keep coming back to this. Again, that's for next week. Someone says, how do you get good at programming? I just want to make sure we have all the bases covered with all the examples. You know?
Yeah, no, the music thing is definitely like, for somebody who's practicing, like, where while they're growing up, they will always tell you these stories where they just had to practice, practice, practice,
Yeah. Do you
practice.
play
So
any musical instruments or any of that
no,
stuff?
I
No.
was horrible at it.
Yeah.
I was, because of my sister, because of my older sister, I was also enrolled in school with kind of musical education, and it was a disaster.
Yeah.
It was, I to this day I remind my mother that wasn't the best decision, but she's I'm kidding, of course, but Yeah, that's always a joke in my family. I always bring it up why I had to go the same route. No, I played a little bit of piano and it was the beyond terrible. So
Yeah.
so we have I agreed getting impatient with JavaScript plus being rushed by my bootcamp made React a lot harder to learn compared to had I really learned JS. Well, yeah, that's the thing. That's again is going to be one of the main topics in one of the following live streams where basically we'll talk about uh, things you should be aware of boot camps. And again, this is not some kind of just because like we both self studied doesn't mean that like there's a bunch of great devs who are coming out of boot camps, but that's something you should be aware of. Where yes, you will be rushed. That's what I hear time and time and time and again when I speak to people where that's not like oh it's sunshine and rainbows. You literally get in like it really depends on you what you are trying to do as far as the success as far as like how much the effort you put in and it's gonna be fast so always my suggestion is before you even go to bootcamp it's my suggestion to actually understand what's happening and at least do some basics. What do you think?
Yeah. No, 100%. A lot of the boot camps that I talk to that actually have a good reputation, they all have prerequisites that you have to meet before attending because if you don't have the basics like down, you're going to get lost very quickly. And so I think boot camps are not designed for complete beginners with no coding experience to go into because in 3 months, you're going to be learning things fast. And, a lot of boot camps as part of their entry they have you build like a basic HTML, CSS, and JavaScript project just to gauge your base before they could even, enroll you because they don't want you to fail because, like they don't want you like bunch of people start a boot camp, fail, and then give bad reviews. So they want to make sure that that doesn't happen. So yeah, no, definitely don't go like I guess it depends on the boot camp, but like I still am very in disbelief how people get jobs after 3 months. And I know there are people out there, but I wasn't that person, like it was very hard for me to learn to program and code.
No, for me, it's even, thinking about like learning everything. Like, first of all, my kind of grind with boot camps is the fact that everything is jammed together. Everything is about the full stack, the full stack, the full stack. Where in reality, you know, what are we talking about? So you spend what 2 weeks on HTML and CSS, and then a little bit of, on JavaScript, and then let's put it this way in a good scenario on React, and then let's say jam something like a Python or Java or something where again you're pretty much going to learn how to type hello world and then you'll be rushed
Yeah.
through it. So for me it always comes down to if you're really spending that time then it would be much better to do it as far as focusing on one thing than become this very well rounded like front end developer instead of both. That's what I
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
understand.
Yeah. I agree with that.
And but in general, to get all the knowledge in 3 months, I really like this kind of the thought there. It was, and I actually learned that not learned like I heard that few years, I would say even 4 or 5 years ago, where someone said that it's not even about like learning everything in 3 months. It's about like how your brain just turns into that kind of, you start thinking about problems as a developer as to solve them. It just takes a little bit of time for you to keep working on something, and that's in my opinion is not something that you can learn just in 3 months. That's literally something that you'll as you slowly progress, the more you'll see that, and the more you kind of you'll approach those things in that manner. So therefore, those 3 months is always very sketchy for me.
Yeah, I see another comment from Andrew, and the only reason I want to say it because me and him like literally think the same. And he later says, "I hope that didn't sound harsh," and I don't think it's harsh at all. He says, "If you want something, you will make time for it. Otherwise, it's just another pipe dream." And that comes to kind of that idea of like saying no that at some point we're going to talk about. It's like you really have to make that commitment. And I think a lot of people but I don't know what it is. But like I know my whole life changed when I started taking responsibility and finding time to do the important things that are necessary and not making excuses and owning my faults. You know what I mean? So that I don't think that's harsh at all, Andrew.
Yeah,
It's right on.
that will be another the main topic and everything. But it's hard for me. I'm not probably the best person to say like how to stay motivated in a sense that I don't I just it's I don't know. You like well what? Oh, for me, it always comes down to, well, what is the other choice, right? So if I'm
Yeah.
not gonna do this, if I'm not gonna code, if I'm not gonna like
Yeah.
whatever,
Exactly. Same.
do something and it doesn't have to be even code. We can talk about whether you're pursuing something else, right? So what is going to be something else? And usually that something else is something that definitely is not going to give you anything,
No.
any meaning. So it just really comes down to, okay, so I have these two choices. I might as well go through that. That's really kind of my best answer.
I don't think there's a Russian word for motivation. I don't know if it exists. I don't know if it exists. Like whatever I used to tell my mom, you need to motivate me like people do in America with positive reinforcement. She would look at me like I was on crack or something. She was like, "What are you talking about? Just do the goddamn work that I ask you to do. Is that so hard?"
For
It's
for
funny though.
for me, what I'm noticing, like for people, the a lot of people who are getting into web development, it's literally about the same as was with me and Paul. It's about, look, if I don't do this, then I'm just going to be stuck in that position where I'm at right
Yeah,
now for next 5, 10, 20 years. And that, for me, was the best motivator that there ever was. It was just like, okay, look,
yeah.
if I don't do this, then nothing is going to happen. So yeah, that's kind of my best kind of stab at it.
And to give example of that, if I did not switch my mentality and just did not think that way, like I used to be in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's a very like close knit sport where you're working with people, uh, very closely. And so when the pandemic hit, there's a lot of people that I know that had Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu schools. They literally closed down and went out of business. And so if like the thing that saved me was that I didn't know if I was going to get a job as a developer, but I believe like I don't want to stay where I am today because I'm not sure what, you know, my life is going to improve. And I learned to code, I learned all the stuff, and I got a job. And literally, if I didn't have that mentality just to focus on doing what's necessary, I would have been another one of those jiu-jitsu instructors that lost their business due to the pandemic or lost their job due to the pandemic. So you just gotta like like if you need to make a change in your life, like don't wait to be motivated. Just take the steps to do it. Like, you know,
This is a very good one. Do you think a basic understanding of React outweighs a deeper understanding of just vanilla JS in terms of getting a first job? I wonder what skill would a company be more likely to hire you with?
I
That
am going to
this
say yes. I'm going to say
the
yes.
the basic vanilla outweighs the React.
The React outweighs the basic vanilla. The basic React outweighs the deep understanding of JavaScript to get your first job.
I also would agree, but it also depends on the interview. If they will start trying to catch you on vanilla JS, then
Okay,
it's gonna go
let
south
me
pretty
rephrase
quickly.
that. You need to know the basics of vanilla JS. And when I say basic vanilla JS, you need to be comfortable working with a DOM, basic array methods, and stuff like that. But they might not ask you to talk about like classes, this, closure. They might, but like they might not. Like definitely know the basics of the language. But if you think of like more complex stuff with JavaScript, I still don't know some of that stuff. And here I am working. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, it's gonna be easier for you to showcase what you know in React than complex
yes,
stuff.
yes, 100%,
Unless
100%.
unless you make some YouTube videos or maybe blog posts about those topics where you can show that you have this deep understanding of
Yeah,
whatever. But
yeah,
it's definitely knowing the basics of React and getting something like to actually showcase the project is
yeah.
definitely gonna be
Like I
the
have my
case.
JavaScript and security, so like I usually this is the process I follow. If I want to feel good, I will make the thing in React, and then if I hate myself on a specific day, I will recreate the same thing with vanilla JavaScript. And then I feel really good afterwards because I'm like, yes, I learned something new in JavaScript again.
No, JavaScript is something that you can literally every day you can learn
Something
something
new
new
every day.
and some
It's
kind of understanding. So,
like Kyle Simpson still keeps learning new JavaScript, and
yep,
he's like the
yep.
JavaScript
And
master.
he's the
You wrote
guru.
a book, you don't know JavaScript because like he still doesn't know JavaScript, and he's Kyle Simpson. If you don't
Yeah.
know who Kyle Simpson is, just look it up. But he
Uh,
wrote that book. You don't
yeah,
know
very good
JS.
book. But for me, if I want to be perfectly honest, that was overwhelming the first time I even
Oh
opened it.
no, oh no! I
It
read
was
that
it.
first book 5 times, and every time I read it, I get something new out of it.
It's literally has been the process where as you're moving along, then you open up and you're like, okay,
Understand
now
more.
this one makes
Now I
sense.
yeah, yeah,
Now I
yeah,
understand that,
yeah.
and slowly, but even so, you still like there's some like I'm like, okay,
I read
like
those
where are we?
first books like from start to finish. I understood part like a small part of the first book. All the other books, I had no idea what they said, but I just read them. But I wouldn't be able to tell you what he was talking about. And now, like I reread them again, I'm like, oh. And I
Yeah,
bet like next year when I read it, I'll be like, oh. And then
yeah,
10
but
years after that, you know,
yeah, that definitely that was the case. I
it's a good
mean,
book.
he
Good book.
did kind of in the first intro, he did kind of
Preface that
explain
with
that.
that. Yeah,
He
that's
said
the
like
process.
this is for people who already have been working for a year at least with JavaScript because but that is something that people jump into and they're like, whoa, and that's exactly what I remember first time reading it and I was like what's happening in here? But yeah. Your MERN project will be a Udemy course. Yes, there's going to be a course. There's going to be two projects. First one will be on YouTube, as always, as with every courses, and then the second one will be Udemy exclusive and all that. And then I'm working on a first one. I have no time limits right now. It's in the process. I'm hoping very soon I'll get something already so you can see the progress. I'll get some kind of URL so you can see where this basically is going. But yeah, it's um it's eventually going to be there. Hello from Greece. Love your teaching style. Thank you. Uh, so we have Arthur. I believe he's in UK, but he's originally from Poland.
Yeah,
Hello from
let's
Philippines.
Poland represent. My
Po-
grandmother from Poland. She moved to Ukraine. My mom was born in Ukraine, moved to Moscow. I was born in Moscow. So I got a little bit of everything.
yeah, my sister right now lives in Poland, so
Nice.
that's some. She loves it there. She enjoys it. Just dropping. Yeah, we have Ian Bayliss. Hey, Ian. Hi, how are you? Nice to see you here. Just dropping by to say hey. Wear a tuxedo like Step Brothers. I guess that's for the Halloween costumes. Um, okay, so this is I would call it the classic. Is it necessary to learn data structures applying for front end, back end, full stack developer job? Like again, where are you applying? I'm a
Google.
developer that I know who's going right now for one of the fan companies. Yes, it's pretty much only the data structures and everything. Yet at the same time, the job that she basically got hired for, the one that she's currently has, there's just you pretty much have a Figma mockup and you build it. That's kind of the simplest. Again, it's going to depend on the company you're going for, but in general, I don't see some local dev shop just throwing algorithms at you. I really don't. What do you think?
Yeah, it definitely depends on the companies because I've been to interviews where it's a thing and I didn't do too well in those. And then there were jobs where they just give you a home take project or during the interview ask you to build something. And those are, the jobs that I like because I want to build stuff. So that is.
Do, do,
But to be honest with you, like I am starting to learn algorithms now and I have like bunch of like books that I'm reading on code because to me it makes sense. Like if I'm going to be developer for the rest of my life and I enjoy it, like I'm going to learn something,
I'm
you
sorry.
know.
That's I'm not. I'm laughing. What kind of, but basically not smart person I am. I'm not laughing at what you're replying. So, when there's a super chat came up, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
when
yeah.
when somebody leaves a sticker, they actually explain it. Like, what's the sticker here? So I'm seeing here in the application, and in here it says pair character stretching his arm forward, raising his thumb up. And I thought that this is what I was thinking. I read this and I'm like, okay, there's somebody that I need to kick off. And I keep going back to the chat and I'm looking like, where is this person leaving that guy? And now, of course, I go
You
back and
realize what it was.
there's just a sticker. So
That's so
person didn't
funny.
do anything bad, and I was
That's
already.
hilarious.
I just thought that he's just leaving some dumb remarks.
Being like silly. Yeah, it's so
And
funny.
I was like thinking, why would you waste your money to leave that comment? But I guess I see.
We learned something new.
Yeah, you learn every day something new. Da, da, da. Well, this is another goodie. When having difficulty to do projects from the scratch, is tweaking projects done in tutorials a right strategy? And this is what I do see. What people I never really have done that. Again, not because it's right or wrong. I just have never really approached that way. But I do see people tweaking it and working with it, and I think, as far as my opinion, well, it's better than just
Yeah,
doing nothing. So
it's like a half step
yeah, but
before.
for me, if you're talking about, it's always, I would suggest focusing on the small stuff first. It is like, again, with every project, Paul's gonna tell you this. I'm gonna tell you this. It's the same thing. I'm also, when I'm something, when I know that, okay, I want to build this, but I always start with, okay, so if I have an application with 6 pages, and it's gonna be, whether it's a React application or whatever application, I go like, okay, let me just start with that one section, one whatever component, and that's how I kind of look at it, and then I slowly keep adding stuff, and therefore, for me, it comes down to, you can tweak the existing project, but if you have difficulty starting from the scratch, I definitely would say start from something small. Build, I don't know, a nav bar. Just decide, okay, so I'm gonna have these links, I'm gonna have this. Again, once you have the nav bar, go, okay, you know what if I add a hero section underneath? How am I gonna approach that? And then, starting part is tough because you, again, depending on a project, but you need to get the fonts, you need to get the images, you need to decide on color, like all of that is kind of, it is annoying for me. I always usually, let's say the first days are kind of, you feel like you're not moving, but I definitely would say start from the small project, as far as my suggestion, and then you can tweak it, but it's kind of slippery slope. If it's, I don't know, what do you think?
I think like if you brand new and you're kind of like I'm still learning, yeah, like take a project, break some stuff, and then try to fix it. That's what I would say, tweaking it. Like that way you get deeper understanding of what you're doing. But if you say tweaking, like okay, this person created this project and I just changed the colors and I put in my portfolio, I'm like that's kind of like you're not doing yourself a service. You're just kind of like hurting yourself because when you're going to be asked deeper to explain what you did in a project, if you don't understand it, then it's not good. But ultimately, definitely build stuff from scratch. And like the difficulty why you can't build something from scratch is because you haven't tried building something from scratch. So I learned to build from scratch by trying to build something from scratch, failing, then trying again, failing, and that repetitive cycle. Eventually I had a navigation bar that I built myself, and then eventually I had like whatever know, about me page and like whatever, but it takes time, and that's the hardest part. And bunch of people that I talk to, like it's so silly to me because I'm not a guru, I'm not an expert, I'm just like you, I'm still learning, I don't know anything half the time. But people come to me and they're like, Paul, once I watched your YouTube channel Coding After 30 and I started building projects on my own, it was really hard, I didn't know what I was doing, but now like months into it I remember stuff better, I'm able to recall stuff better, and I'm able to build stuff faster. And so there is no like process except just start doing it, you know what I mean? That like, and you'll get better basically, you know.
We have, is building mobile first preferred in the
I was going to ask
industry,
about that. Yeah.
or does it matter if you do mobile or desktop first? Um, I wouldn't. I definitely don't think that it's preferred or I I prefer doing it because it's easier. Meaning, it's for me, it makes more sense to start from the mobile and add, as you get there. Oh, Paul is shaking his head.
No,
There's the
because I
drum
can't
alert.
think like that. I can't think like that. That's funny you say that because I was going
Yeah,
to
no,
ask about that.
no, for me, it's definitely the case where like, here's the thing, like, when you're talking about Figma mockups, let's say, right? They're
Yeah.
always done in a big screen. So when you're
Yeah.
looking at that one, is like, okay, you right away know.
Yeah.
But for me, I still make everything starting. I kind of decide, okay, how I can make this one, and I look through different mockups and see some kind of example where I can use that one for the small screen, and
Yeah.
then slowly kind of. There has been some cases where I build the big screen and then kind of go down,
Yeah.
but I definitely would say that it makes a little bit more logic
Yeah,
to me.
I think it depends on you. Like for me, like it's totally the opposite. I could look
Wow,
and
that's
start like mobile first, and I have hard time picturing what the end product would look like. So I need to build everything out the way it's going to be on a desktop, and then make it responsive. And I think the question is like not like versus like mobile first or desktop first or whatever. Just as long as you understand responsive design and you could make your application responsive, I think you'll be fine, no matter if you start like John does from mobile first, or like me, because you don't have a good imagination, you need to see it first to make it like, smaller. I do desktop always. Like you saw the video like project, the simple one that I want to demonstrate crowd I built. Desktop, it's the only place that it works well, and then now I could make it responsive, but I have to do everything desktop first,
Oh wow,
unless,
that's
hold on a second,
yeah.
unless it's a mobile app, because then I know that this is how I want it to look on mobile. And the only difference is like, is it like this or is it like landscape mode? That's it. But for the full website, like I need to be able to like see like the final desktop version before I build like the mobile. Unless it's specifically mobile, then it's like I already know what I want to see. I just have hard time going from mobile to desktop.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that there's some kind of preference, but I do want to add something that we kind of touched upon earlier, where it does showcase, let's say, when you go for a company, not only if you can just build a project, but also they appreciate if there is already some kind of structure to it, right? So I'm talking about the modularity and everything, because again, this is how you're going to be working, right? So again, depending on a company, but I have, like, when I go, like, I've had questions like, so why you don't do this way, why there's not a single component and all that. So if you want to kind of showcase that you're, even, I wouldn't say level up, but let's say that you have an understanding of like how the big application will work, but then splitting it up and kind of making in smaller modules. Even though personally, for my projects, a lot of times I don't see the point. I literally make my component, and then if I feel that it's too big, it just doesn't make sense, then I move it. And then in there it's the opposite, where they start with the smallest one. But I don't think
Yeah.
that there's a difference between whether you which way you kind of go. I think it
Yeah.
really comes down to preference. We have, how can I improve my design? I understand React Next.js, but my concentration is backend development. But my CSS is just too bad. Any hint? Again, something we have been saying over and over and over again. It's literally, as far as design, yeah, I would suggest looking for mockups. You don't need to see, if you,
Recreate it.
especially if you're doing the backend development, you don't need to come up with designs. I mean,
That could
it's
be like a good use case for Bootstrap, you
Yep,
know.
yep, exactly. And just find something. We again, even, I am not saying you need to go back and rewatch whatever 2 hours each for the previous live streams, but that's definitely something we talked about. Uh, how how to manage university studies in coding? uh, I don't know how to proper, like, I don't know, like, are you full time student? I assume so. I mean, there has to be some kind of, like, I remember that last 2 years when I was able to pretty much kind of devote my time a little bit. I wasn't doing 40 hours a week, but it was kind of like my kind of hobby, where I was doing time studying, working, plus I was doing the code. And then once I pretty much went part time in work, there was way more time. No, there's no really secret. Just come up with some kind of, I don't know, a schedule or something along those lines. What do you think?
Yeah, it's just, it's just have to prioritize like how much. Obviously, if you're a student, you got to make sure that you're getting all your, you know, college goals or university goals in check, and then whatever free time you have, you spend on coding. If those are two separate things, if you're studying CS degree, then it's like you'll be
Then it's
coding as
pretty
part of
much the
your,
same,
yeah,
yeah.
all the
Same,
time. Yeah.
yeah. But if it's separate, you'll have to say no to some things. I mean, there's really no, again, like, silver bullet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got. What do you guys think about unsociable? How can I improve that when I go to work? Well, chances are the other developers also probably not going to be the most extroverts.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Just be yourself. I really don't know, like, how well. I mean, talking about code helps. that's definitely something that you can talk to people over, and like if you're genuinely interested in that, right? Then that's definitely something that you can spend a lot of conversation on. And
But
yes,
at the same time, it's like very like normal for a lot of developers to be introverts anyway, like you're saying. And so it's actually you're gonna be amongst your people. A lot of
yeah.
people think I'm like extroverted, which is I taught martial arts for so long, so like I know how to present myself. But like when the camera goes off, I'm like, don't talk to me, people. Let me just sit here,
Well, you
you know.
definitely don't look like that in those videos.
Yeah, no, I'm such an introvert. Like you ask my family, like I hate going to social events. I hate doing stuff unless it's like a Russian like birthday party, you know.
Or it has to be Russian. It cannot be normal.
No, no, I would not go to a normal birthday party. Russian birthday parties, you have no idea what happens. It's like, I mean, you know what happens because it's like same. Like if you're from, you know, like when I had my wife, who like she was from Mexico. She was like Mexican, and I was like, from Russia. So when I went to visit her family, I was like, this is exactly like a Russian birthday party, except people speaking Spanish and drinking tequila versus vodka. That's it. But everything else was the same.
Oh
So.
yeah, no. It's yeah. I don't know. I haven't attended either of them. So what else? What else? What else? Blah 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 blah. I think we're pretty much done.
Yeah.
There's a book question about what's the name of the Kyle Simpson's book? It's You Don't Know JS. It's
Yeah,
pretty much
like
series. I
5
think
of them.
he's
Yep.
releasing the second one, and
Yeah, I loved his book so much that I still don't understand. I supported him in the process of making his new book. It's good. It's a great book. I think people should use it as reference, and you don't even have to buy it. He has his first like version on GitHub for free.
mm, mm, mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that we'll just sign off. Thank you, everyone who came here and asked the questions again and participated. Thank you, everyone who's going to watch it on later. Again, if you get anything out of this, out of just
Yeah.
our regular Monday night conversation, that's super great. And what do you want to say?
Just thank you, John. Another great conversation as always.
Thank you, Paul, for coming.
Sometimes we laugh, sometimes we get
We
off topic,
cry.
but it's still all good. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No, yeah. Thanks for everyone, and we'll see you next week. Thank you for coming.
Have a good night,
See
everyone.
ya.